Welcome to episode 100 of One on One with Mitch Lafon. I am your host, Mitch Lafon, of course, brought to you by the Heavy Montreal Festival taking place August 7th, 8th, and 9th in beautiful downtown Montreal, featuring Slipknot, Faith No More, Korn, Lamb of God, Iggy Pop, and of course my favorites, Warrant, Dokken, and Lita Ford. An incredibly important episode for you this time. Important because it is number 100, but also we have got Doug Goldstein, Guns N' Roses manager in the late 80s and 90s, talking about everything under the sun for about 2 hours. There is Use Your Illusion concert footage that's sitting around. We talk about the Maynards. We talk about Axel, the Montreal riots and all kinds of other riots, all the different lawsuits, and there were certainly a lot of those. But up front, Damon Johnson of Black Star Riders. The new album is Killer Instinct. And of course, Damon goes on a solo tour through April. And I couldn't do this without a co-host. And of course, it is Mark Strigl of Talking Metal. Good day, sir.
Good day, Mitch. Yeah, congratulations, 100 episodes. And there's just been such great stuff and such great press coming off the past 100 episodes. So congratulations to you.
Thank you. And of course, when you talk about great press, any episode that has a Guns N' Roses connection really seems to find legs, and it ends up everywhere, right? Be it Brave Words or Blabbermouth or Melodic Rock or Loud Walk. As soon as there's Guns N' Roses, it just spreads. And I think this
Yes.
2-hour interview with Doug Goldstein is going to be one for the ages. We talk about, is there going to be a reunion tour? And I think people will certainly get a kick out of his answer. We talk about this long lost concert footage that was going to be put out after the Use Your Illusion tour. We talk about all the different songs that were controversial, from Sympathy for the Devil, Look at Your Game Girl, One in a Million. We talk about a lady called Michelle Anthony, who was their lawyer, and she was the one who brought Steven Adler into the room and said, "You're fired." We talk about that famous thing where Slash and Duff were tricked into giving up the Guns N' Roses name and how that really happened.
Wow, I want to hear this. Yeah.
Oh yeah, listen, there's a lot. I mean, in 2 hours, there's a lot of good stuff. We talk about Rod Smallwood and Merck over at Sanctuary Records, who had taken over the management of Axl and Guns N' Roses in the early 2000s and what happened there. Just a lot of stuff. We talk about Alan Niven, who was the other manager. Listen, this one is one that people are going to want to listen to once and then rewind and listen to a second time. But we're going to make people wait. Let's listen to Damon Johnson first. Now, you're going to be doing something with Damon as well soon.
Yeah, it's wild. I met up with Damon for the first time. Probably it was actually back in mid-January, late January in New York. Him and Ricky. I went and did an in-person interview with him. We just really hit it off. I don't know. We were drinking beers by the end of the interview. At least Ricky and I were, and having a great time. And there was a snowstorm going on. So I really really like Damon, and I've been a fan of his music and surprisingly his voice, because in Black Star Riders, he does a lot of those great backing vocals, and his guitar is just insanely good, as you know. But this guy can sing. If you go back and listen to Brother Kane, which was kind of I'd call him a 90s era, hard rock, grungy band. I was a big fan of Brother Kane. Have both their records sitting on my CD shelf that I bought way back in the day, and so it was just such a great honor to meet the guy and hang out and interview him. And I am excited to say that I'll be doing something with him and VH1 in just a few weeks. He's going to be on this web show on VH1.com called That Metal Gear, where we talk about guitars and amps and all that fun stuff. So I will be on That Metal Gear with Damon Johnson of Black Star Riders in less than a month on VH1.com.
Yeah, and Damon, like you said, Damon is just such a great guy. I got to know him when he was with Alice Cooper. He was becoming a father at the same time that I was becoming a father for the first time, and we traded baby stories, and he just fit in very nicely to what Alice Cooper was doing. And just like you mentioned, in terms of adding backing vocals, he added not only a great tone with his guitar, but such a great flavor to the songs with his vocals. um, just an incredible talent, and he's done it all. He's done, the grunge stuff. He's done the classic rock stuff with Thin Lizzy, Black Star Riders, and of course Alice Cooper. He's done country stuff, and he's got the Damon Johnson Trio on tour. So always a pleasure to hear from Damon. And what was good about the interview with Damon this time is that he sort of called me out of the blue and said, "Hey, can we do something?" And so the interview takes some nice, interesting twists and turns because there's not a set of questions that are prepared or anything. All this
Cool.
research done, and that's always fun. So and of course the new album Killer Instinct, worth checking out. The band is going on tour in the UK with Def Leppard and Whitesnake in December. And all I can say is I need to get to the UK in December because that is a triple bill that is worth seeing. In fact,
Absolutely.
worth
Yeah.
traveling for. So here we are. Here is Damon Johnson, and enjoy. We are speaking with a guitarist, and I will say extraordinaire, of Black Star Riders, Damon Johnson. And of course, you were in Alice Cooper for a while too, which is where I got to know you. But how are you?
I'm doing really good, Mitch. Always a pleasure to talk to you, man.
Yeah.
I think the last time we spoke, correct me if I'm wrong, was when I had just left Alice to play with Thin Lizzy. Is that right?
Well,
or was it way back?
No, in fact, you played with Thin Lizzy at the Bell Center, opening up for
Judas Priest.
Judas Priest, and I was there. So it would go back to that. When was that? 2000.
That was 2011. That was the latter part of 2011. Yeah.
Wow. So it's been way too long, and of course, we share stuff outside where our kids were born around the same time, and I think you gave me a congratulations, and like a week later I gave you a congratulations kind of thing.
That's right, bro. That is right, man. Rock and roll and kids, they just seem to fit.
And we're both, as we're recording this, hiding out in the recesses of our houses because our kids are running around making noise everywhere else. So
no doubt about it, man. The kids definitely run the show at my house. That's a fact.
Yeah, so let's talk. Boy, there's so much to talk about. There's the Damon Johnson Trio. There's his upcoming solo dates. Of course, we got to talk about the Alice Cooper days, and of course, the Killer Instinct, the new album by Black Star Riders, and that band is getting a lot of love. Really, just a lot of love from fans and stuff. And tell me if I'm wrong. Correct me if I'm wrong here, but I think had you made the last two albums as Thin Lizzy, I think the fan base would have turned real negative. And yet by changing it, all of a sudden, I think fans are rooting for you. Is that about right? Did the name change really do that much?
Well, I can only answer that from my perspective, Mitch. I certainly think it would have been a mistake to have called it Thin Lizzy. Mm-hmm. And the easy barometer for me was simply that had I not been in the band, and I'm as big of a Thin Lizzy fan as you've ever known, if you had come to me and said, hey, the 21st century version of Thin Lizzy is going to write and record new music and put it out as Thin Lizzy, I wouldn't have wanted to know about it.
Right.
I would not have been interested. So, when we initially, kind of put our toe in that lake of considering, making a new record as Lizzy, the chatter was pretty immediate and very negative. And I get it, man. That didn't hurt anybody's feelings. That was almost expected. So, that and the fact that we knew we had written some pretty good songs, and we felt like, well, you know what, if we change the name, we're walking away from a big trademark, but it'll give the songs a chance to stand on their own. And it just wouldn't have been right. It just wouldn't have been right to call it Thin Lizzy. So it's, I must say, man, it feels pretty amazing to be sitting in my comfortable chair here 3 years later, 2 albums into it. And, there's no question that we made the right decision. And I'm really proud of the band, because I believe that we've delivered. I feel like we've delivered quality songs. We deliver quality live performances. And, the Thin Lizzy fan base has been incredible to us, and just the rock and roll fans out there in general, man. We don't take it for granted, and we're very, very proud of it.
Yeah, they've become exceptionally accepting of the band, so much so that they've taken the last two albums and made it to those must-have kind of list. You're sort of like the savior of rock and roll kind of thing. It's amazing because new bands today don't get a chance, and yet, as a reporter, I hear people talking. They always go, "Oh, have you checked out Black Star Riders? Have you gone to a Black Star Riders show? Man, I can't wait till they make another one because the last two were so good." Just very wise.
Well, listen, man, that's incredible for me to hear because, man, we've had our heads down so much working on the songwriting in the studio, and we just got back from a month of dates in the UK that, we don't really get a sense of that word of mouth thing because we're kind of in this bubble, but it has been very encouraging, very gratifying to be doing some press for the album, to run into some of our peers out there on the road, and they've already picked up the record and they're talking about it. So, it's great to talk to someone like yourself, Mitch, that is certainly plugged in with all kinds of musicians and all kinds of bands. And
I'm not even kidding. On my Facebook, fans will write in. People on my Facebook. I don't want to say I have a fan base, but they always send me a link to the Black Star Raiders Killer Instinct and say, "Hey, Mitch, have you heard this? What are your thoughts on this?" And it really happens like once a week. It's really something different because it's no other band am I getting that kind of feedback from the fans. But let's talk a little bit about Joe Elliott, Def Leppard. You are going to be in the UK with Whitesnake and Def Leppard in December, so a little Christmas treat for our UK fans. But Joe started off working on the album, ended up not finishing the album. Just tell me what happened there. I know Scott seemed to have been a little bit upset in recent interviews, but a little bit of the Joe story.
Well, listen, let me clarify. Joe never officially began working on the album at all. As a matter of fact, Joe never heard one piece of music. We had simply agreed that he was going to produce it, that we were going to work together. We were going to record it at his studio in Dublin. We had the time marked out for October, and that was it. So we went back to touring in the summer of last year, and then everything about Def Leppard's schedule changed. And we totally understand, man, and Joe was bummed out. And I think there was certainly, I know it was tough for Ricky because he and Joe are best friends.
Right.
And Scott loves Joe, man. Joe and Scott have been friends forever. So when the word first came down, they were like, "Oh man, this is a drag," because Joe's obviously a big name. Joe knows a thing or two about making great rock records. Mm-hmm. And there's no question, man, we could have done good work with Joe. But I will tell you that in retrospect, all due respect to Joe, it was probably a blessing in disguise because once we started to look around, I had literally just crossed paths with the much decorated rock and roll producer Nick Raskulinecz, who happens to live right here in Nashville with his family, as I do with my family. So we had met randomly at an Iron Maiden concert here. And ironically, our wives became friends and had started kind of staying in touch. So, several months after Nick and I had met was when we got the word about Joe. And I asked my wife, I said, "Hey, will you call Amber and ask her if she'd, tell Nick to give me a call?" And he did. And I said, "Hey, man, what do you think?" And he said, "Well, send me some songs. Let me see what it sounded like." So all we had at that point, man, were acoustic demos of stuff that Ricky and I had been writing, and then it took off from there. So that's the Joe story, and it's killer, man. And listen, any rub you've heard in the press or read from Scott has all been tongue in cheek. Right. Scott loves Joe. We all do, man. And Joe will be the first guy to say, "Hey, man, you guys delivered. You delivered a kick-ass second record." Oh, yeah. And he's pulling for us and proud of us. And there's no question, man, that he had some influence on helping us get on these dates with them in December.
So there'll be no on-stage fighting in December then? Because I was kind of looking forward to that.
Nah, I don't think so, man.
No.
Any on-stage fighting might have to do with the Def Leppard and the Whitesnake guitar players wanting to sit in on some Thin Lizzy songs. You know, they may scrap over that, but
yeah, exactly. So by the way, speaking of Thin Lizzy guitarists and songs, Scott Gorham is one of those names that we all look up to. And now you get to be next to him day in and day out on stage. How is that for you? Because you grew up a huge fan. I mean, this would be like me putting on the Ace Frehley makeup and standing next to Paul and Gene, right? So
Sure.
What's it like for you?
It's incredible, man. It really is, Mitch. You know, Scott and Brian Downey asked me to join Thin Lizzy in October of 2011, not long before you and I sat down and spoke about it. Mm-hmm. And it was just it was a mind-blowing, it wasn't even a dream come true, man, because I would have never thought something like that would even be possible. Huge fan. I have been my whole life since I was 15. I saw Thin Lizzy in 1979 randomly in my home state of Alabama. And it changed my life, and it set me on a different path than what a lot of my friends were on musically. And, you know, I'm grateful for that because it kind of gave me my own identity. It certainly helped me when I was fronting my own band and Brother Kane and writing songs for that. And, you know, it took me a while, I think, to kind of get over it. You know, it took me a good full year of touring to where I could just sort of take it in stride and not walk on stage every night, still kind of giddy about it. I've even watched videos of us, you know, on YouTube, and I'll be like, God, man, I wish I could wipe that stupid smile off my face. I'm just.
But you can see it. You know, I actually watched some YouTube video, and you did sort of that traditional, you know, guitarists stand together back to back kind of thing. And as you approached, this big smile came over your face, and I was like, look at that. Isn't that cute?
No, man, it's real. That's a real thing, man. It's just real. Scott has been my hero all these years, you know, and now he's my partner. He's my songwriting partner. He's my bandmate. He's my friend. You know, we really have become very, very close. You know, our wives have become great friends, and I just think one of the biggest. I can't be more proud of the fact that, you know, that Scott is so close to me and my family. And you know, I'm really proud of the fact that I've earned his respect and that he counts on me and he respects my opinion and he wants to know how I feel about all sorts of things related to being in a band and writing songs and making records. So it's indescribable.
Let's talk about Damon bands. There's Brother Kane, there's Whiskey Flats, there's the Damon Johnson Trio. Are all of those entities active, or has Brother Kane been retired, Whiskey Falls been retired, and now it's just the trio? Sort of just update us on those three.
Well, you know what, Mitch, right now, you know, Black Star Riders is my absolute number one priority, period.
As it should be.
And yeah, and the way I've kind of planned it out with my family going forward is, you know, that's going to be our priority. The only way we can get that band to achieve any kind of critical mass is to make it our priority.
Right.
Scott, Ricky, Jimmy, Robbie, all of us. And then if we have time in our schedule to work on some other stuff, then we can do that. But the days of me juggling 3 and 4 different projects, Mitch, those are behind me.
Okay.
It just takes too much energy. It's not fair to the other guys in those other projects. It's really not. And you know, I learned so much when I was in Brother Kane. I learned so much when I was in Slave to the System with Scott Rockenfield.
Oh, that's right. I forgot about that one. That was, what, 2004?
You know, yeah, 2004 and 5. Okay. And then Whiskey Falls, it was the same thing, you know, and I just think after over 2 decades in this business as a guitar player, a songwriter, a frontman myself, it's like, man, to be in BSR and to be a solo artist, that's enough for me, man. Yep. It really is. And I'm very fulfilled with that. I'm incredibly excited to have, you know, a rhythm section now that I can go out and perform with and essentially play music from my entire career in addition to some new stuff that I've written. And I'm really excited about it.
You know, you have been in the in the business for many years. You had success with Brother Kane. How difficult is it now to get a band like BSR, Black Star Riders, up, active, getting a following? Because you don't have MTV, you don't have FM radio. I mean, how difficult is it to have this band be successful?
It's very hard, Mitch. I won't kid you. Right. It's really, really hard. And I keep using that word proud. I'm really proud of the guys in the band. It's like, we have so many discussions behind closed doors and phone calls and conference calls and emails and, because it's tough. You're talking about guys that are all, middle-aged, decorated veterans of this business. Everyone's got families and children and mortgages and commitments, and as well as anybody, to get a band off the ground, what are you going to have to do? You're going to have to get on a bus, and you're going to have to hit the road and go out there and build the fans one at a time, because like you said, there is no MTV. Right. There's barely any rock radio anymore. People talk about U.S., American rock radio. That's a joke.
Doesn't exist.
That is a joke. It doesn't exist. It's classic rock mixed with, whoever the biggest bands of the past 4 or 5 years are that are still on a big enough label that's going to spend $200,000 a single to go out there and work it. And nobody's got that kind of money, man. Nobody does.
Is it frustrating rebuilding it? Because what fans don't appreciate is that being in a rock band is dirty, dirty work. Those hours when you get off the bus and you're sweaty and then you have to drive 800 kilometers or 8 hours to the next, that is not fun stuff. I mean, being on stage is fun, but the other 22 hours are not that pleasant.
Well, I'll say
sometimes.
This to you, brother. For us, I will say,
okay.
I would never say that it's frustrating, because this was our choice.
Right.
We chose to do this. We made the commitment, and the last thing we would ever want to do is to go into an enterprise like this with a negative attitude or,
right.
Looking at what's wrong with it. We definitely want to be those guys that look at it as the glass is half full all the time. So knowing that, and then being ultra, ultra grateful to our fans, old fans, new fans, fans of other bands that we get to play with and they get to check us out. Listen, man, we're appreciative of that. And I don't think you've ever seen this group of guys more accessible and more humble than we've ever been at any point in our careers. Because again, that's all you've got. You've got the show and you've got the fans, and you got to get one-on-one with those people as often as possible and express that gratitude, man. Because if you do that and you deliver great music, they will come back time and again. And like you said at the beginning of this interview, brother, the word of mouth is real, man. It's kicking. It's happening for us out there. People are talking, and we feel it. We're finally starting to feel it, and it's incredibly gratifying. And, we just believe that we truly have something now that we can build on, and that we're not just a bunch of guys in some side project making records, for fun. This is a real career, man. I think we're definitely moving forward and making real progress. And, I'd love for us to make 4 or 5 albums.
I definitely think you will. I mean, the first one got a lot of people's attention. They went, oh, this is going to be Thin Lizzy light. And then it turned out to be, no, this is Black Star Riders full throttle. And then the second one, they go, wow, it's the sophomore jinx. And then the second one was fantastic. And they went, oh, okay, I'm ready for number 3, right? I mean,
well, that's a fair enough assessment, Mitch. And again, that's what we've been feeling.
Yeah.
I think there was sort of this weird expectation of a sophomore jinx, and we never thought about it. We never did. I mean, the other, maybe this is surprising news that I can share with you, is that the songwriting in this band is so easy. It's the easiest part of the entire process. And on paper, I guess you would think, well, okay, you were Thin Lizzy, but you changed the name to write new music, and some of the music will celebrate that sound. But wow, that's kind of impossible, and it's got to be hard. It's not hard. The songwriting's easy. It really is, man. The challenges have more to do with just finding new fans, finding our audience.
Yeah.
And and we've just made a commitment that the aspects of this that we cannot control, then we're not going to worry about that. The stuff we can control is the music, the quality of the shows, and interaction with our fans. This band is committed to those three things as much as any group of people I've ever heard about. So
absolutely,
it feels good.
Before I keep you for too long, I do want to know about the Alice Cooper days, but quickly, you were involved somehow with the Damn Yankees, that band that had Ted Nugent, Jack Blades, Tommy Shaw. What exactly was it? You made an album with them and it never got released, or what went on there?
Yeah, Mitch, I've always said that I was in the Damn Yankees for 15 minutes. It was 15 minutes.
But were you replacing Ted?
No, I was actually temporarily replacing Tommy.
Gotcha.
This was in 2000,
right?
Early 2000. I had recorded some songs for a potential solo record right after Brother Kane had disbanded. And some of this material made its way to John Kalodner's desk.
Okay.
And John called me, said he loved the songs, and he asked me if he could play them for Jack Blades. And I knew who Jack was. I'd never met him, but I said, of course. Yeah, let him check them out. So then Jack calls me and conferences John Kalodner in, and they say, look, we would like for you to come out and jam with the Damn Yankees, minus Tommy, because Tommy and JY had just acquired the rights to the name Styx.
Right.
Dennis DeYoung had departed,
right,
or had been ousted, or however that whole thing went down. So Tommy had to sort of seize the day and focus on Styx at that point to kind of rebuild it. And he had given the other guys his blessing to go ahead and make another Damn Yankees record, because that's what had been on the schedule, I think, for quite some time.
Right.
So we gathered up at Jack's Ranch out in Northern California, and we hit it off. They loved my singing. They loved my playing. They loved my songwriting. And, man, we just put our heads together for the better part of the next 4 to 6 weeks. And they had a few songs, a couple that Tommy and Jack had written together that were cool. Ted brought some stuff in that we finished. Jack and I wrote 2 or 3 songs together, and that was it, man. And we were full steam ahead. Brought in a producer, brought in a mixer, made the record, and as far as we knew, the plans were for that album to come out. Tommy even came back in toward the end to add some additional vocals on there. And the running joke was, well, we're going to look at this like it was the Eagles when they just added Joe Walsh. They didn't throw anybody out. They just brought in another guy. So
right.
I was like, hey, man, last I checked, Joe Walsh is about the coolest guy I've ever heard of. So I'm cool with with that comparison. And Mitch, all I can tell you, man, is we got the mixes back for the album, and nobody was excited. None of us in the band. Kalodner, we all just kind of went, it's kind of just okay. And I don't think there was that, we just didn't feel like there was that one song on there that you could really sink your teeth to and kind of base the promotion of the entire record around. Some pretty good stuff. There was a song that Jack and I wrote called We Are the Ones that he put out on one of his solo albums.
Okay.
There was a song that Ted and I wrote together called I Won't Go Away.
That ended up on Crave Man.
Very good. Very good, sir.
Yep.
And I think there was a couple other pieces of music that saw the light of day somewhere. But, man, I still talk to all those guys. Tommy lives here in Nashville, so we've run into each other at the airport a couple times. Ted and I are great friends. I just saw Jack last year. As a matter of fact, my great friend Kerry Kelly is playing guitar in Night Ranger.
Yep.
But because Jack called me, said we need a guitar player. I said I got the guy. So, man, it was just one of those really cool experiences for me. And again, playing with guys that I had been aware of for quite some time. Ted, especially, man, I was a tremendous Ted Nugent fan as a kid. As a matter of fact, I saw Thin Lizzy open for Ted Nugent in '79. I was going to see Ted, and Lizzy just happened to be on the bill. It was a mistake. It was a total accident.
There you go. Serendipity.
Serendipity, brother. So that's the Damn Yankee story right there.
Well, and of course the album was tentatively titled Bravo. So hopefully at some point it'll find its way on some kind of Damn Yankees deluxe edition of something, because
yeah, maybe so, man. You know, that whole thing, that's Jack and Ted and Tommy's baby, and they earned that. You know, those guys made a couple of really great records and toured a lot, and they got a lot of fans out there. So you know, it was an honor for me to be a part of it, and you know, it was a great experience for me.
Yeah, and I just recently interviewed Jack about 2 weeks ago about his new Revolution Saints project, which is really a fantastic album. And then just for my own edification, Alice Cooper, you were in the band, I think, with Mr. Kerry Kelly at the same time, right? Weren't you the
Yeah,
duo?
as a matter of fact,
Right.
I did two and a half tours with Kerry. Kerry joined in 2006, and we did that entire year together. And then I left to work on Whiskey Falls, and then I came back in 2009.
Right.
And Kerry and I toured 9 and 10 together. So yeah, man, Kerry's my brother. I love that guy.
And just how was it working with Alice? I mean, you know, he's a consummate professional. There's no, at least from my perspective, there's no nonsense. It's show up, do your job, and everybody goes home happy. How was it? And he's an idol of mine. I mean, Alice Cooper, Kiss, Cheap Trick, that Aerosmith, that was my 70s.
Yeah, man.
And that's not a bad foursome right there, I must say. But how was it just playing 18 and Elected and night after night? I mean, it's must have been. I mean, it's demanding because you're also doing sort of theater at the same time. But how was it?
Well, again, it was incredible.
Yeah.
It was incredible. You know, I think back to the very beginning when I first joined in 2004. I was kind of thrust into it, and I had been focused so much on the material. It was a lot of material. You know, to play a 90-minute Alice Cooper show, it's almost like one long medley. Everything runs together, as you
Yep.
know. It is like a production piece, and,
Absolutely.
and you do have to work around the props, and you do have to work around the interludes and the lighting transitions and things like that.
And the
Totally
guitarist
new
gets no break because while Alice
No.
is changing costumes, you're providing background music. You
Yeah.
don't get to sit down for 2 hours.
Yeah, no doubt about it, brother. So, but the thing that really that I'll never forget, man. Like I said, I was so focused on the music that when we went on stage, we were in New Jersey, the very first show I played, and it was like riding a roller coaster. Like I had never seen Alice Cooper live. You know, I'm from Alabama, man. Alice rarely played the state of Alabama.
Mm-hmm.
I was a fan of the songs and the albums, but I'd never had a chance to see him. So he was not as on my radar as some other bands had been. So to be standing on stage and it's my part to start Is It My Body, and I'm standing there in the spotlight playing it, and up walks Coop with this giant boa constrictor around his head. Nobody told me that, you know. I would kill to have video footage if it were to exist, which I'm sure it doesn't, but videotape of that very first show, because I'm sure I look like a deer in headlights for the most part of it. But Alice is my brother, Mitch. Again, I love his family. He's the big brother that I never had. And he's taken such good care of me. He's taught me so much. That guy is as big a music fan as you and I are.
Mm-hmm.
And he's a fan of great electric guitar. And it's just one of the highest honors of my career that guy would pick me out of the bunch and say, this guy knows what he's doing. I'd like for him to play in my band. And I would have never been ready for an opportunity like Thin Lizzy had it not been for the time I spent with Alice. So I'm eternally grateful to him. And, you know, we stay in touch very, very often, Mitch. As a matter of fact, I just played with Alice this past New Year's Eve out in Maui. You know, whenever they need somebody, if my schedule has got a hole in it and they need somebody to fill in for something, man, I'm grateful to be one of their go-to guys.
Yep.
And, you know, it's a big honor to be a part of that family. And, he deserves all the accolades and all the awards and all the praise, man. He's the real thing, and he's a pioneer, man.
Yeah,
he's a total pioneer.
And a survivor. I mean, what he went through with drugs and alcohol in the 70s and 80s, and he looked emaciated and on the verge of not being here. and here he is, stronger than ever, sounding greater than ever, opening up for Motley Crue on the last few in the last few months. Man, the man is unstoppable. I mean, totally unstoppable.
Oh, he's extraordinary. He's extraordinary. But you know what? He's earned it. He was a visionary.
Yep.
He'd be the first guy to tell you he was very fortunate. You know, he had some real talented people around him. The original band is one of the greatest rock and roll bands of all time, almost unmatched. And of course, his relationship with Bob Ezrin. I mean, those first 5 records, man, are just the stuff of legend.
Yep,
of legend. You know, and so I respect his gratitude and his humility about all that. He's the first guy to give credit where it's due, and he's just a great role model as well, Mitch. You know, for any of us. I've learned a lot from Alice, and to this day, I don't hesitate to call him, you know, for advice, to get his thoughts on things related to my career or even my family. Man, that guy's he's an extraordinary human being.
Yeah, I'll end on that because as an interviewer, Alice has done, you know, everything, and when he talks to you or when he talks to me, he'll treat you as if he was your best friend. And that lack of attitude, that humble attitude, that is just very refreshing, you know. And
no, he's amazing, man.
Yeah.
I love that guy, and I think of him every day. We literally just hung up a photograph in our house today, Mitch.
Yeah.
A big photograph of my family and his family together when we went down to see them open for Motley Crue last year down in Birmingham. And we had a great time, man.
That's
he
great.
called me up on stage, and I get to sit in my hometown on School's Out, and, you know, what a guy. What a guy.
and you got to play with Chuck again, so it's like having a Brother Kane reunion at the same time.
Hey, man, Chuck is my brother. Chuck and his wife live here in Nashville as well now. And so talk about extended family. I mean, we're branded for life, me and that guy.
Yeah, and he's got a cool side project with Beasto Blanco as well. So, you know, all the best to all of you. I mean, you've all done exceptionally well, and it's just great. As a fan, the music that comes from Black Star, from Brother Kane, from Alice, and it's been a pleasure. You know,
Mitch, brother, it's always a pleasure to talk to you, man. Thank you for all the kind words, and you know, I really appreciate everything you said about Black Star Riders, man.
Yeah. I'm
really proud of it. Proud of the songs. Proud of the band. I'm really grateful to have the relationship that Ricky and I do as collaborators. He's the collaborator that I thought, you know, maybe that time was behind me. You know, I just could have never expected to cross paths with somebody that I could write songs so well together with. And so, you know, thanks for spreading the word out there, and congrats to you, man, on everything you're doing, and you know, all the best to you and your family.
Thank you. And yeah, you know, one day I'll have to get Ricky on the phone. Folks in the UK and Europe know the Almighty a lot more than we do in North America, but what an incredible revelation he's been to us with Black Star Riders. Great stuff.
Well, listen, man, you just let me know when you're ready, man. You and Ricky should get on the phone together. He's got as incredible a story as anybody you'd ever meet, and you know, the fact that I would grow up on a chicken farm in Alabama, and he would grow up on a chicken farm in Belfast, Northern Ireland, and we'd wind up in a band together.
It's kind of funny.
That's a crazy story in and of itself. So,
it really is. Of course, remind folks to head over to DamonJohnson.com. You've got the tour dates coming up, and the lucky folks in the UK get a triple bill that just makes your mouth water. I mean, Def Leppard, Whitesnake, and BSR. That's all you need, really.
It's going to be good, Mitch. It's going to be great. We're looking forward to it, and you know, man, we're looking forward to playing more in North America and playing some other continents around the world this year. So thanks for everything, buddy. Keep in touch, and I look forward to talking to you again really soon.
Absolutely. There you have it, folks. My interview with Damon Johnson of Black Star Riders. New album is Killer Instinct. Check him out on his solo tour that is going to Pennsylvania, New York, Illinois, and etc. in the month of April. And of course, this episode of One on One with Mitch Lafon brought to you by the Heavy Montreal Festival taking place August 7th, 8th, and 9th at Parc Jean Drapeau. Listen, I've mentioned Slipknot and Faith No More, but let's also mention Mastodon, Within Temptation, Gojira, Testament, Cold Chamber, just a bunch of great bands. So, do head over to heavymontreal.com for ticketing information. And speaking of tickets, I have 2 pairs of tickets to Heavy Montreal to give away over the summer, and I will of course give you details on that. You can check out the Facebook page and follow me on Twitter at Mitch Lafon, and I will give you all the details, and of course listen right here. But you know what, Mark, we have delayed enough. It is time to
let's get into this.
Let's get into the epicness, because you think of songs like November Rain and Estranged and all that. They weren't good enough at 3 minutes. They had to go to 9. Guns N' Roses is known for epic, and so a 20-minute interview with Doug would just not have sufficed. So we did 2 hours.
All right.
Why not, right?
Why not? I'm going to listen to every second of it.
Yeah, and you're going to hear everything from how Doug's family situation, his father and his brother, ended up being sort of like what Alan Niven and Axel were to him. We talk about manic depressiveness. We talk about all those songs. I mean, all the stuff we mentioned up front on the show. All the nitty gritty with all these different lawsuits, Slash, Duff, people leaving, people getting, listen, just enjoy the next 2 hours. Make sure before you hit play or you go any further, go to the bathroom, go get a cup of coffee,
right,
or whatever you want, beer, whatever you do. Just sit back, enjoy. And for those of you who listened to me on a different podcast before, I mentioned the word minutia. There is a lot of minutia going on here, a lot of details. You cannot listen to this in the background. You need to put on the headphones. You need to clear your mind. You need to concentrate.
Okay.
So here he is, speaking with Doug Goldstein, better known for being Guns N' Roses manager in the time that it mattered back in the 90s. Is that fair to say, when it mattered? I think it is, right?
I think so, Mitch, yeah.
Yeah, so Doug, there's so much to cover with Guns N' Roses. We've got riots, we've got feuds with people like Vince Neil, we've got Use Your Illusion. Should it be 1 album instead of 2? But let's start with you. Your dad was a police officer.
Yes, sir. Yeah, he was the self-defense instructor for San Diego Police Department, and so I had this unique opportunity to have a brother who was my roommate, who was genius manic depressive, oddly enough, and which will lead me into something with guns. But so my father was a bit of a tyrant. I had this love of music because of my brother. I was listening to Cream and Yardbirds and Django Reinhardt, John McLaughlin and Mahavishnu. And then I also had this penchant for martial arts. So I married the two, and about age 14 started working concert security in the San Diego area.
At the sports arena?
Yes, sir. Sports arena and another spot called Golden Hall, where the smaller concerts would be held.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know that place. I've visited San Diego like 28 times in my life, and I love that sports arena.
It's a great spot, yeah.
Then in 1994, you were involved somehow with the security for the Olympic Games, the LA. Is that correct?
Yeah, actually, it was 83, Mitch. I had just graduated from college. I worked my way through college by doing concert security in the Arizona area, and I would often be brought out to LA and San Diego to do like big shows like The Who or the Rose Bowl. I actually was in charge of logistics for the Rose Bowl, not just the game, the football game, but also the Tournament of Roses parade.
Oh, wow.
So I would sit inside of a command post with a lieutenant from Pasadena PD, and we would kind of move personnel around. So when I graduated from college, and I have some interesting stories about The Who, like not letting Morgan Fairchild off the VIP ramp to join Roger Daltrey and getting called a fucking cunt for doing that.
Oh, my.
Yeah, so...
And of course, back then, I guess security was a very different game than today. I mean, you didn't have to deal with all kinds of terrorist threats and it was.
Yeah, absolutely.
It was. I don't want to say it was easy, but it was probably a little more relaxing than it is today, right?
Well, I always took it a lot more serious than the average bear, to be honest with you, Mitch, because I thought, what am I going to bring to the party? So, like, I was when I went to I'll talk about the Olympics first. So when I graduated from college, I moved out to work with the largest called Peer Group Security Company.
Right.
They invented the yellow shirts that you see at concerts today.
Yep.
Two gentlemen, one guy, Damon Zumwalt, and his college partner, Pete Kransky, invented that whole thing. And they've done pretty much every Super Bowl and Olympics since. So I've gotten the opportunity to work 8 Super Bowls. Wow. So in '83, I moved out to work for them, and I was the chief recruiter of Olympic security out of the Westwood Staffing Center. So I literally had a hand in pretty much every person that worked security, privatized security for the '84 Olympics. And strangely enough, before that the Olympics took place, I was approached by a guy named Steve Vando, formerly Van Halen's tour manager, which is where I met him.
Right. And
he asked me to tour with Air Supply and doing security. So, I'd always thought that it would be fun to go on the road. And so I took that job. And I always joke that doing security for Air Supply was not that difficult. It was like, hey, grandma, pull the thorns off the roses before you put them on stage. So, it certainly got a lot more difficult as time went on, the Black Sabbath days and, further on. But the one thing, Mitch, when I talk about, I wasn't just security. In other words, I didn't just travel with the band. I would do things like when we played, even with Air Supply, I flew in early as an advance person to try and figure out where I should take them into the hotel because I didn't want to go through the main exit. Through the main entrance. And so, I would find the freight elevator to take them up. And when I went over, I met with the chief of police for the Air Supply concert. There's a Coliseum and stadium right next to each other, both called Roberto Clemente Coliseo.
Right.
And so he was explaining to me that either you leave directly from the stage and get going, or you're going to be stuck in traffic because there was only one point of ingress and egress.
Right.
So I looked across the parking lot and I saw this gate, and on the other side of the gate was the highway. And I said, has that gate ever been used? He said, no. I said, look, if I buy you a new lock and key and give the motorcycle officers T-shirts for their kids, can we use that exit? He said, yeah. I mean, they've been using that for 25 years and nobody had figured that out. So I was always trying to bring something extra to the party.
Right. Now, the Sabbath lineup you were dealing with at the time, who was in the band? Was that with Dio or was that?
No, Glenn Hughes.
It was Hughes.
It was kind of interesting. I was working for Don Arden, yet I was really close with Sharon. I don't think too many people were able to have both of those relationships, but
not in those days.
No, exactly. So Don says, I need you to go over to the Franklin Plaza Suites and introduce yourself to Glenn Hughes. So I said, okay. So I pulled up in my car, Mitch, and there was about 200 people in the street. And I parked my car and I made my way through the people. And there was Glenn laying naked in the street. And so I said, Mr. Hughes, Doug Goldstein, he said, can I help you? I said, yeah, I'm working for you now. He goes, were you going to help me up? I said, no, I don't think so. I'll be on the curb. I'll be on the curb. When you're done throwing the pedantic rant, I'll be over here. Just let me know.
And of course, those were not to disparage him. Those were the cocaine-fueled days for him back.
Big time. Yeah, big time.
Yeah. So, and of course, he did some stuff with Van Halen. Okay.
Yeah.
So
and then I also worked with David Lee Roth as director of security on his Eat 'em and Smile tour,
which is a great tour.
Yeah, fantastic.
So as that stuff's going on on sort of the other side of town, Guns N' Roses is starting. They're doing the Troubadour. They're starting to get some action. You joined them as a tour manager, a TM, as we like to say.
Yes, sir.
In '87.
Yes, sir. Yeah, I was at home working in the title industry, which is a branch of real estate.
Right.
And I was called by Barry Siegel and Rich Feldstein, two business managers that I had done work for in the past. And Mitch, I wasn't following the music scene at that point.
Right.
They asked me what I knew about Guns N' Roses, and I'd never heard of them. So my reply was, I'd rather have the end of a rose stuck in my face. And and they said, no, it's a band. And so I said, well, send me the music. So they did, and I loved it. Actually, because it was Appetite. And I thought, wow, how interesting. They have two singers in the band, because I listened to the first two tracks. And and they're so diverse that, yeah, I believe that they actually had two singers. So I talked to Niven on the phone, and we got along pretty well, and he brought me up to meet the guys. And interestingly enough, there was this point where we were going to go to a restaurant. And so Steven gets into the back of the truck, and I said, what are you doing back there? He says, well, I'm the drummer. And so I get the back of the truck. So I said, fuck it, me too then. So I jumped in the back. So him and I were always really close, just based upon that moment in time.
Yeah, and that's something I want to explore a little bit later too, because as we know, Steven gets fired at some point, and that's a point of contention. Around that time when they bring you in, from all accounts, the whole Guns N' Roses camp was a big giant mess. The label wanted to drop them, and management wanted to keep them on, and they were bringing people in and out to try to get them corralled. Did you get any of that sense, or was on what you saw all smooth sailing?
No, I mean, clearly there were difficulties between the manager, Alan, and Axel, and he kind of asked me to bridge that gap, and they were having problems with particularly Slash trashing hotel rooms, and Axel to some extent, but I said, give me 2 months, and I can fix the trashing hotel scene. So what I did, Mitch, is and I had done it before, but it works. So Slash trashes a hotel room, and so I take him downstairs to meet the manager of the hotel, and I said, sir, I said, we broke a TV. And he said, okay. I said, how much is that? And he goes, well, that's going to be $500. And I said, nah, not a chance. Because we were staying in really old hotels, 2 to a hotel room, and I said, not a chance. I said, that's a $250 television.
Right.
And he said, no, it's $500. I said, fuck you. No, it's $250. Here's your $250. And we're walking. So we go to sound check, and Slash is singing my praises about how I'm saving him money. So I do that about 5 more times. And then Slash breaks a lamp in his hotel. And at this point, he's looking for me to go to the manager and save him money again. So I take him downstairs, and I go to the manager. I said, sir, I said, we broke one of the lamps. He goes, yeah. I go, how much is that lamp? He goes, well, that's like $100 lamp. I go, not a fucking chance. He goes, what do you mean? I go, dude, I've been traveling with rock bands for my adult life. I go, that's a $500 fucking lamp. And Slash looks at me like, what are you doing? What are you doing? I go, yeah. I go, here's $500 from Slash. And our apologies. And so that was it. That got out there. And I'd say for the most part, Mitch, that was the end of trashed hotel rooms.
And that, I guess that was just trashed out of boredom. They were just sort of being rambunctious.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, because that's what every rock band before them had done, right? So
right. Now, somewhere in all of this, and I think it might have just been before this time, there was a show at the Troubadour, and they had brought out Bob Ezrin to come and check out the band. Were you there for that?
Knew you'd get your Ezrin play in there.
Listen, I got to get the Kiss stuff in here. So there's Paul Stanley coming up. And of course, when you were managing or tour managing Sabbath, you must have had Eric Singer in the band.
I did, yeah.
See?
I love Eric. He was a doll. Yep.
It's a Kiss world after all. But
yes, sir.
Yeah, you see, I knew we'd get all those connections. By the way, how was Eric Singer back in those days? 'Cause to me, he's one of the nicest people I've ever met. He's an incredible...
Absolutely, Mitch. Yeah. He's a sweetheart. Really bright cat. Like, he pretty much dissects everything.
Mm-hmm.
But he's a sweetheart. Great heart. Great. I don't know, maybe that's a drummer thing, because Adler was just a doll. I mean, what a sweetie. And Matt and I, we had our go rounds, but at the end of the day, Matt's a really, really wonderful person. Yeah.
And you can tell he's always tweeting about saving dolphins and helping.
That's right.
Yeah. He seems to have a social consciousness.
Very much so.
And, well, I'll just finish on Eric Singer. Other than being a really great guy, he's just an incredible talent. I mean, he's fit in with Sabbath, with Badlands, with Kiss. He does a great job. Were you there for the Bob Ezrin get-together?
I was not. No, okay. that was before me.
Okay.
I was literally told when I was brought in, they had just finished the Cult tour. And I was told they had an Australian tour manager named Colin.
Right.
Who I think Niven said, we didn't think it was possible, but he was doing more blow than the band. Yeah.
What a day that. What days? Were you there then when Paul Stanley got involved? And
I was not. No, that was still before me as well.
Okay, so which is probably a good thing. I don't know if having Paul Stanley, and I don't mean any disrespect to Paul Stanley, produce an album is a good thing. I think artists should be artists and producers should produce. I don't want to hear a Bob Ezrin solo record, right? So,
yeah, right. Absolutely. Yeah, no doubt.
Okay, so you go out on tour, you get this spot opening up for Aerosmith on their permanent vacation. Is that your first go around with the band at that point?
No, we actually, the first thing I did with them, we went to the UK and Germany.
Oh, right.
Yeah, just a club run. And I forget who the opening acts were. Faster Pussycat. Yeah. In fact, there's a great story. So we're in Germany, and I think Frankfurt, and I go to I'm a vegan at the time, full vegan.
Right.
And so I go across to McDonald's, and I'm looking for anything. So I'm eating I think hash browns, because that was the closest thing they had. And I come back, and I see Faster Pussycat's drummer is naked and duct taped in the elevator. And so I help the guy out. I'm like, what the fuck is going on? And apparently Faster Pussycat had thrown him out of their hotel for being fucked up. And he came over to party with Duff, Slash, and Izzy. And he ended up urinating on Izzy's bed. So the guys roped him up and sent him on the down flight of the elevator.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Yeah.
That's fantastic. All right, let's start getting into some of the nitty gritty.
Yes.
The band obviously does very well. They open for Aerosmith. Appetite for Destruction explodes. They are called by Metal Edge magazine the what were they called? The next big thing, or 90s rock is here it is. And then at some point, Steven Adler leaves.
Well, Mitch, you're leaving out one really important.
Yeah.
There was one no-show by Axel in Santa Barbara before my time.
Okay.
Then we had done a theater run, and we're in Arizona, and Axel no-shows. He's held up in his room with his girlfriend, Erin, at the time. And we're supposed to be playing Celebrity Theater. And I keep going to TSOL's drummer, Mitch, saying, play Wipeout. I don't give a shit what you do. Just keep playing. And Axel just ends up no-showing, and I have to go on the stage and announce that the show's over. And Niven calls a meeting and says, you know what? Fuck it. This guy's done. He's out of the band. And he pretty much has everybody on board. Slash comes to me and says, you're the new guy. What do you think? And I said, honestly, my perception is you don't cut him out now because you have heat on your record. People are interested. The time to cut him out would be after this album cycle, because you don't want to change the voice in the middle of a tour.
Right.
Were
there any voices? Were there any voices like in the in the background ready to step in? Had you called Sebastian Bach? Had you called?
No.
Okay.
No, at that point we didn't even know who Sebastian Bach was. He was. Yeah, they hadn't released their record yet, to my knowledge, Mitch.
Right. But there was nobody waiting in the wings.
I guess the point that I'm making is, and it's one that kind of persists forever as a dispute between my ex-partner Alan and myself. Is I loved Alan. I still love Alan. Alan did some wonderful things for me and for the band. But the truth is, he hated Axel Rose.
Right.
And from day one, he hated him. And so I would threaten to leave because it was crazy, and he would continually offer me more money. And finally, I got a phone call from John Bon Jovi, and he offered me $250,000 a year. I think I was making $500 a week at the time.
Right.
And I passed, and he doubled it, and I still passed because I believed in G&R, and I believed in Alan. But more importantly, there was this dynamic which I had lived earlier in my life. My father, the tyrant, and my brother, the manic depressive. I wasn't able to fix that relationship. And so I was given a second bite at the apple because you had Alan, who was clearly a tyrant, and Axel, the genius manic depressive.
But if I can, and listen, I'll admit it straight up. I know Alan. I speak to Alan. To be fair, as a manager, don't you have to be somewhat rigid, especially if your talent is sort of loosey-goosey, destroying hotel rooms, not showing up for gigs? I mean, don't you sort of have to march in there like a general and say, okay, folks, stand to attention? I mean,
there's, Mitch, there's two ways to look at it. I used to have this conversation with Slash all the time. He would say, Doug, I'm done. I've had it. Right. And I would say, it's totally up to you. I'll play it the hardball way, but it's over at that point.
Right.
I mean, it just is because Axel just didn't give a fuck. He literally would have been fine going home. And so I would tell Slash, I remember we played in front of 800,000 people in Sao Paulo, Brazil. And there was a hiccup in the show, and Slash came to my room and said, Doug, I just don't want to do this anymore. And I said, then fine, let's not. I go, but realize tonight you probably made $1.5 million personally. So let's put you out playing in front of 1,500 people, and you'll make, I don't know, maybe $1,000, maybe $2,500. So if you're willing to do that, I'll back your play. And I was willing to do that at any point. But after we would have that conversation, Slash would say, let's just keep it going then.
Now, you mentioned Slash a lot. Was Duff and Izzy and Steven coming to you, or were they just sort of hanging out, having a good time?
Duff would sometimes.
Okay.
Izzy never. Izzy was really close with Alan.
Right.
They had their kind of little black magic ring. They'd go to New Orleans and dabble in that. I think because of the Jimmy Page relationship. They loved Page and they thought that was kind of cool. And that's just not who I am. There was one point actually where Alan and Izzy got asked to leave a bar, and the next day that night Alan has me on the phone to bring in a group of my security friends, including a guy named Dave Passanella, who at the time was strongest man in the world. And so I argued with Alan. I'm like, why are we spending all this money? He said, it's a principal thing. And so we threw the security guards into the creek surrounding the bar, and Alan and Izzy went and finished their drinks. And, that probably cost $15,000. I didn't see the point, but.
But
by the way, Mitch, I will say that the guy that you know today, the Alan Niven that you know today, everybody in life has the opportunity to change. And I think Alan today is a wonderful guy. I really do.
Right.
But you didn't know him back then. It wasn't all.
No, listen, and I'm not going to pretend to say that I knew him back then. I mean, back then I was, 15. Right.
Yeah, right.
But, you know, when you look back at the history of Kiss or Led Zeppelin or, you know, knuckles being rapped and knees being tussled, seems to be part of the rock and roll lore, right? I mean,
well, you know, it's funny you mentioned Peter Grant.
Right.
On June 11th, 1989, I'm staying at the Conrad Hotel on my honeymoon,
right,
having breakfast with my wife and a guy named John Jackson, our agent.
Mm-hmm.
And John walks in and says, Peter Grant's in the lobby. I said, fuck, introduce me to him. He goes, I don't know him. So I said, I'm going to meet him. So I walk out. I said, Mr. Grant, he's sitting in a chair. I go, Mr. Grant, Doug Goldstein. And he stands up and, oh my God, Mitch, he was fucking huge. He was massive. And he goes, Doug Goldstein, Guns N' Roses. I said, wow. I said, yes, sir. He goes, Doug, you're doing a brilliant fucking job. He goes, I was just talking about you lot on the radio show last night that no other band has come around with the impact of Led Zeppelin until you guys. He said, and you're doing a brilliant job. And I said, you sure you're not talking about my partner? He goes, no, not the Kiwi. He's the most hated man in rock. I was like, fuck. He was talking about Niven, of course. So,
right.
You know, I mean, it was what it was, Mitch. I mean, I was definitely a nice guy. Was I an enabler? Probably to a great extent. But I thought that it was a better idea to keep the band together. Right. That was my point all along. Keep the band together, because how are they going to create rock history if Axel quits and fucking goes home?
Or gets fired, right?
True. Yeah. I mean, Niven was like, let's throw him out. I'm like, it's not your band to do that. You can certainly present your viewpoint, but at the end of the day, it's up to the guys what they want to do.
Right. And that gets us later on in the history where they all sort of walked out one by one, and the name was signed over. But all right, let's since we're on to, you know, the black magic portion of the episode.
Oh my God. Yeah, right.
And you wanted to keep Axel happy. Let's talk about Yoda, Sharon Maynard.
Yeah. Now Alan has wow. I mean, you know what? I mean, again, I love Alan.
Right.
And if I was in Alan, you know, walk a mile, right, Mitch? I mean, walk a mile in somebody's shoes. If I was in Alan's shoes, maybe I would have some of the same perceptions that he has had.
But I'm actually reading off a website, and it's dealing with her obituary, unfortunately. But it talks about,
not really, unfortunately.
Well, I didn't know her, but it talks about how she was a spiritual advisor for Axel, and how Axel would have you run out and take pictures of upcoming venues and places.
Not true. Not true. I've never taken a picture on his behalf, ever. That was always done by one of his assistants, like Craig Goosewalt primarily.
Right, the tour man. What was Craig's? I interviewed.
He was
Craig.
a valet for Axel.
Right, and he. Hold on here. I have it here. He's personal assistant. That's where he is.
Yeah, right. Yeah, basically that's a nice name for a valet. I mean, he would like take Axel's luggage in. If Axel wanted a burger, he would go get it. I mean, you know, every band has one.
Right, and he's the one that I spoke to about 6 months ago in an interview, who said he is convinced that Guns N' Roses is going to reunite in 2016.
Well, his mouth to God's ears.
So we'll see. But all right. But so Craig or whoever, in fact, it says here, it was customary for tour employees to submit photographs, and then Maynard would look them over and say, this person has a good vibe or a bad. I mean, let's cut to the story short. What the hell was that?
Yeah. Well, you know what? I mean, Axel was introduced to Sharon via his therapist, Susie London. Right. Again, you know, Niven, for some reason, wants to continue to take shots at me, even though I love Alan. We had our time together. Right. I think that we were a great team, honestly. I never had designs on Alan's job, but he's not going to believe that. And so that's certainly his right. But
and I'll be fair.
Yeah,
let me be fair to Alan. I didn't get this from Alan. I've been studying.
No, I'm only going by emails that he has sent me.
Okay. No, but I've researched all this stuff. I pulled out a whole bunch of fun names from Barry Fay to John
Right.
Reeves
to
what was her name here? Michelle Anthony, who was Dee Anthony's daughter. I mean, I researched the whole thing. I got a pile of questions.
Good. Yeah, good. Yeah. So anyway, so back to Sharon. So Sharon was brought in because Susie London, Axel's therapist, who Axel had a lot of faith and belief in the regression therapy that they were doing together. So she says, I see this lady, Sharon Maynard, and, it's kind of like if somebody chooses a religion, Mitch, that's a really sensitive subject. And so all of us kind of let Axel have his space and his own beliefs on what he thought was right or wrong. But towards the end, he was forcing me to give half of my salary to Sharon Maynard to keep him and I involved together.
Right.
Well, actually, it's something that him and Mercuriadis came up with.
Right. And I want to talk to Merc because I've read that history too. And your management company went and signed with Rod Smallwood's Sanctuary, and somehow, and you'll correct my words if I'm wrong, you got screwed.
Yeah, pretty hardcore. Yeah.
I mean, that's the bottom line, right?
Yeah, big time. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, but let's, before we get to Merc, so how long was Sharon or this Maynard or Yoda? I don't know why she was called. I guess because Yoda is a spiritual guy. That how long was he involved? Or she involved with Axel?
Right up until her death, to the best of my knowledge, Mitch. I mean, I was gone in 2002, but yeah, she continued on and probably still would be with him had she lived.
Okay, but I mean, it interfered with the tour, right? She would say there's a bad energy around, and I'll just pick a city, Denver, and he'd say, well, we're not playing Denver. I mean, that's pretty much what was happening.
Pretty much, yes, sir.
And as a manager, you never just thought.
I called him on it. Okay. Yeah, again, when somebody has a religion, you have certain windows of opportunity where they're second guessing it and they ask your opinion.
Right.
And but would I countedly say, hey, she's a fucking whack job or whatever else was being vocalized by the rest of the band to me? No, I really didn't want to create that riff again. It's like a person's religion. And whenever you attack somebody at that level, you're going to get defensivism. You're going to get reactionary. So if he gave me the opportunity where he was doubting, then absolutely, I'd throw my cards on the table without any reservation.
Okay. And
he heard me, and he never really came back at me later to say, you know what, fuck you for having your opinion. He absolutely allowed me my opportunity to state my case.
Okay. But I mean, she wasn't qualified. She wasn't a medical doctor. She was, for the lack of a better word, just sort of a housewife.
Yeah, to the best of my knowledge.
Okay. Boy, we're jumping from year to year, but okay, let's get into Merc. You were with, and I've lost my window, but it was Big FD, I guess it was.
Yeah, Big FD. That's right. That was the name of my company. Because my father used to say it all the time whenever I would be stressed.
Right.
He'd say, "Come on, Doug, Big FD."
And you had picked up Guns N' Roses, and we'll talk about how that happened. You essentially took on Axel as a client, and he retained the names, and therefore it became Guns N' Roses, right? I mean, that's
right. Yeah, for lack of a better, right.
That's sort of, and we'll see. Now here it is around, I guess 2000, 2001, and Rod Smallwood, which, by the way, I've heard is interested in doing this Guns N' Roses reunion stuff.
You know what? I've heard that as well, and I love Rod. He's like one of my favorite people in the industry, but Rod's very much of a no bullshit guy, and I can't see him and Axel getting on. I mean, he's gonna confront Axel one time, and Axel's gonna bail.
Yeah, and of course they've already had the relationship with Sanctuary.
Yeah.
Going south, That said, if anybody could do it, Rod is certainly on the short list. I mean,
I would think so. I would absolutely think so.
And with Iron Maiden these days having some issues with Bruce Dickinson's health,
yep,
it's certainly a good window for Rod to focus on this. Now, listen, this is all speculation. Nobody knows anything. Okay, so Merck, who works with Rod, comes to you and says, we're really trying to develop Sanctuary. We've got all these bands, blah, blah, blah. We want to get you on. He signs you on, and then what?
Well, Axel was a little frustrated that I didn't communicate with him about that.
Okay.
About selling my company, which, to be honest with you, Mitch, I thought I did. I mean, I was like, look, I'm going to talk, because I actually spoke with Rod Smallwood.
Mm-hmm.
I went and met with Rod and Andy Taylor because it was their company.
Right.
And they told me that Merck was, and nobody knows why to this day, why Merck was given the green light, the free rein, if you will, to be acquiring all of the different companies that he did. But, it ended up sinking Sanctuary.
Right.
So Merck ends up being a guy who clearly wants my relationship with Axel. And so he does a number of things that behind my back to make me look pretty bad to Axel, quite honestly. And so Axel was frustrated with me. But, it's funny, when the new band was touring in Europe, Axel came to my room and said, so are you excited about going to New York on Friday? And I said, for what? And he said, come on, Doug, the MTV Awards. I said, look, I have no idea what you're talking about. He goes, look, Merck has been telling us, me and the band, for 2 months.
Right.
Are you telling me that you have no fucking clue? I go, dude, I have no idea what you're talking about. So he leaves my room, and I call Van Toffler, the president of MTV, who's a really good friend of mine. I go, hey, Van, I'm looking forward to seeing you. He goes, why? I go, at the show. He goes, Doug, you're not on our fucking show. So I go, look, you're going to have to put us on the show. If this doesn't happen, I'm going to end up feeling the brunt of it. I guarantee it. So he tells me to call another friend of mine, Dave Cyrilnik,
right,
who produces all of those shows. So I call Dave, and basically I beg him. I plead. I go, look, I'll play during the commercials. I don't care. So he calls me back a half an hour later and says, you get exactly 2.5 minutes, and then the credits start rolling.
This was 2006, right?
No, 2002.
2002, okay.
Yeah, with Buckethead, right?
Right.
So that was pretty much the last thing I ended up doing for them. A couple weeks later, and I don't remember why Axel was upset at me, but he was. And so he had given the decree that if I see either Doug or our security guy, Bob Wine, Bob Wine's worked with everybody, the Rolling Stones, Springsteen. I mean, he's legendary in the security world.
Right.
So Axel says if I see either of those guys, they're fired immediately. So it was an outdoor festival and in Europe, and Axel's pulling up tardy. I know, tough to believe. And
Axel late? What?
I know, tough to believe. So at that time, local security was pulling out of the pit about 200 photographers. And so they're literally walking in line of Axel's limo. And I thought, train wreck. Axel may fire me, but fuck it. I'm going to save him getting pissed off and whatever emotions he's going to go through. So I jump in the middle of it and tell these people, basically go fucking back to the pit. So Merck comes up and says, well, you've done it. You're fired. So I was literally on a plane the next day.
That's it.
Yeah.
And of course, Merck had his trials and tribulations with Axel. They as far back as, I guess, 2000, we're talking about Chinese democracy. And then Buckethead had some kind of hemorrhaging or something where he got sick and he couldn't. And then, of course, we all know that it came out many, many years later. And his relationship with Axel and Guns dissipated to the point where he even wrote an open letter to G&R fans trying to, I guess, save his own tuchus, right?
Right, yeah, right.
All right, so, boy, there's so much to cover here. Well, by the way, have you heard that Axel has currently fired his entire band, which is why there's more speculation about a reunion tour?
You know, I have heard something like that, but Mitch, it was like 6 months ago. Because, you know, the rumors constantly, people go, because of my 15-year relationship with the entity Guns N' Roses, whoever the members were at the time. Mm-hmm. People call me occasionally, and I had heard that Fernando, his current manager, Fernando Labez,
right,
that he had released some DVD without telling Axel, and Axel, let everybody go. I have no idea if that's true or not. I hear so many rumors, but I had heard that. All I know is that DJ Ashba continues to support Axel in the press.
Right.
Every once in a while, I exchange Facebook messages with Bumblefoot, who I love. I mean, he's a really nice guy, and clearly he's off doing his own thing now, and very successfully.
Oh, absolutely. And listen, I speak to some of the guys via email also. The ones that I do speak to don't seem to be working with Guns N' Roses anymore, and the other ones that I don't communicate with, well, I have no clue. So
yeah, right.
But it does seem as though at the end of the last tour, all of a sudden within like 2 weeks, all kinds of side projects popped up with all kinds of members, and it just sort of made you go, huh, that timing is kind of interesting. You're with G&R, and now you've got Dead Daisies, and now you've got a solo gig, and now you go, okay.
Yeah, I just read something about Chris Pittman and somebody else doing an EDM thing, right?
Right, and you just go, wow, for all these years you're in the band, you don't have these side projects, then the tour ends, and suddenly there's a cottage industry of side projects, and there's rumors coming into my ears saying everybody's been fired, and you go, okay, I don't want to do 2 + 2 = 4, but it really looks like a 4. All right.
So, you know, Mitch, if you want to, we can go back to...
let's go back to Adler.
You want to go to Adler? Okay, let's do that.
I just want to go to Adler because, you know, that's a problem with the Guns N' Roses story. It is so vast, so large.
I know. Yeah.
You know, there's songs we can talk. Sympathy for the Devil. Look at the game. Look at your game, girl. But all right, let me just go with Steven Adler.
Yeah.
So Michelle Anthony, her dad, D. Anthony, managed Peter Frampton.
Yep, and as well as a number of others. But clearly that was
the big one. Yeah. And I think Michelle, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, went off after and had a successful career with Sony Records, I guess it was.
Yeah, she's actually Billboard magazine in 2014 named her the #1 most powerful woman in the music industry.
Oh, so I should definitely watch what I say. Right? But at the time, she was legal for Guns N' Roses, and she was told, call in Steven and tell him he's done. I mean, and you know, listen, I'm simplifying the whole thing, but that was
Alan Niven called her and said, you need to get Adler in here and let him go. He's wasted over $1 million in the recording process. It's over.
Right. Was that? I mean, did people agonize over that decision? Because, you know, here you have this band that's very hot. They're working on music.
You know what? I mean, there's an interesting, I'm sorry to cut you off, Mitch, but there's an interesting understanding that Steven has.
Okay.
Which is that Axel was gunning for him since fucking day one.
Okay.
That's not reality. The reality, I mean, and there's a reason why, Mitch, which I will explain, but Slash and Duff, they had to be there in the studio with him every single night.
Right.
So the decision to let go of Steven was really between Mike Klink, Slash, and Duff, because again, they had to deal with it. So, but Axel was the very last guy to sign the termination papers on Adler. He was agonizing over the decision, calling me saying, "Are you sure there's nothing else we can do?" Because I had taken Adler to so many different rehab facilities, either the normal type like Sierra Tucson, right, or the great venture to Scottsdale, to the golf resort, where Slash shows up and that whole melee happens.
Okay. Now, and of course, eventually Adler sues the band, sues your company, wins a couple of $1 million.
Yeah.
Explain to me how that happened. Why were you not allowed to? I mean, how did a judge not give you the right to fire somebody without penalty?
Well, I mean, it's really easy to explain. We didn't know it at the time.
Okay.
Having not attended law school.
Right.
But the best way to explain it, Mitch, is let's say that you and I start a burger chain, and we open up here in Pismo Beach, and we open up in Montreal where you are. And before you know it, we have 50 different burger outlets.
Right.
But all of a sudden, I turn into an absolute drunken mess. I'm doing cocaine, and I'm doing the advertising on TV. You're going, you know what? I can't work with this fucking clown anymore. He's dragging us down. At that point, Mitch, you can't just say, I no longer do business with Doug Goldstein. Fuck him. He's gone.
Right.
There has to be what's called a wind up of business.
Okay.
So you bring in forensic accountants who do a valuation of the company at the time. And then he's paid off on whatever his portion of that valuation is.
Gotcha.
Now, interestingly enough, we did something called settling on the courtroom steps, which means we have presented our case. Adler has presented his case. And by the way, coincidentally, Adler's attorney, David, I forget his last name. Anyway, all along he's saying, Doug, I don't want you in this case, but I can't drop you. You didn't do anything fucking wrong, but I can't drop you. So when you settle on the courtroom steps, meaning you don't allow the jury to come back and render their opinion, you are then allowed what's called a jury debriefing.
Right. Where
all your attorneys get to poll the jurors about what they were going to do. So my attorney tells me, and he's passed away, unfortunately, Howard King, but my attorney tells me that the debriefing goes something like this. He's up first. He says, okay, jury, what were you going to do with my client, Doug Goldstein? The jury foreman stands up and says, we have a question collectively. Is Mr. Goldstein married? And my attorney says, what's the relevance? The guy says, we want to introduce this guy to our daughters. He didn't fucking do anything wrong except love this kid.
Right.
Next up is Niven. They were going to fucking crucify him. And by the way, I say that, and it was never explained to me why. So in all fairness to Alan, I really can't, I can't speak to that.
Okay.
But that was their perception. So I don't know, I mean, it's, again, Alan doesn't believe it, and it's sad, but I love Alan. I tried to keep him involved. In fact, point of fact, and it's really odd to me that the Slash doesn't have a remembrance of what really happened, but to the Niven termination, Mitch.
Right. Which occurred in 91.
Yeah, well, he used to get terminated about once a month.
By Axel.
By Axel. Axel would call me and say, fuck him. Either that or we'd be on the road, and he would come to Slash and I and say, fuck that guy. I ain't working with him. And I would say, you know what? Fuck you. He's my partner. And Slash would go, yeah, fuck you. He's doing good things for us. But at the time he was terminated in 91, he hadn't spoken to Axel in 9 months. Because I was handling basically all the G&R stuff, and Axel was busy. I mean, Alan was busy producing, writing with Great White.
Right.
So it was working fine for us. I mean, you know, Alan was still making his G&R money, and I was doing my thing with G&R, and so I get this call from Axel. His annulment to Aaron Everly finally goes through. So he's excited. He's like, wow. He goes, finally, the annulment went through. I'm really happy. I said, hey, congratulations. That's great, buddy. I said, you know, you should go have a nice dinner. And I know that you've that this has been like a lot of shit for you to go through. So, you know, enjoy your day and let me know if I can do anything for you. He goes, can I talk to Alan? I'm thinking, wow, it's been a long time, but this is a great opportunity for Alan to get back in. So I put him on hold. I walk into Alan's back office. I go, Alan, Axel's on the phone. He goes, so what? I go, so here's your chance. I go, this is what's up. His annulment went through, and this is the perfect opportunity for you to get back in by saying, hey, I'm happy for you. He goes, Douglas, let me handle it. So I stand there, and he picks up the phone, and Axel tells him what's going on, and he goes, wow, how fucking sad for you. Yet again, you failed at something. And I'm thinking, what the fuck are you doing? What the fuck are you doing? So he goes, you know, in this crazy world of rock and roll, at the end of the day, when I lay my head down next to Ganilla, I know that we're together forever.
Right.
And yet again, you've managed to fuck something up. Click, he hangs up the phone. I was like, I can't even fucking believe it. So my phone rings, of course. Axel goes, did you hear that shit? I go, yeah. He goes, look, Doug, he had a little convertible 325 BMW at the time. He goes, I'm getting in my car and driving till it runs out of gas. And wherever that is, I'll be pumping gas at that fucking gas station. He goes, I suggest you get on the phone with Slash and find out what he wants to do. So I call Slash, and I say what I always do. How are we going to save Alan again? And he goes, you know what, Doug? I'm fucking done with this. I go, why? He goes, I can't do this anymore. He goes, Alan was up at my house, ecstasy, cocaine, drinking, blah, blah, blah. And he tried to hit on my fiance, Renee. Find out what he fucking wants and just pay him off. So I go into Alan. I go, Alan, I don't even know what to say. And I go, I'll fight this if you want. And he goes, you know what, Doug? He goes, I'm so tired of this fucking egotistical asshole. I'm fucking done. He's a fucking cunt, blah, blah, blah. And I swear, Mitch, because I swear to God, up to that point, I was going to walk with Alan.
Right.
And then I'm listening to him berate, denigrate, whatever, Axel, and I'm thinking to myself, you know what? I have, in my time with Guns N' Roses, I've never heard Axel talk that way about Alan, who's making millions of dollars.
Right.
So my mind was made up at that point. You know what? Fuck it. I'll stay with Axel. And so I did. And Alan's remembrance is completely different, and he's certainly entitled to that. But the reality is, back then, I wasn't doing drugs, drinking, or anything else. And Slash used to praise me for the fact that I didn't. Alan and I used to have this ongoing battle where I'd say, look, Slash keeps telling me he doesn't want you to party with the band. He trusts me because I don't. And Alan would say, you know what, Douglas? You have to be one of them. And I go, no, you don't. They don't want one of them. They want a manager that they can fucking trust.
Right. So, looking back, you probably should have walked out with Alan at that time, because the number of lawsuits that comes in the years.
Yeah, right. I know.
I was researching the lawsuits last night, and there's Slash and Duff that's getting sued, and you Big FD is getting sued, and Merck is suing, and Axel's suing, and Azoff is suing, and Jesus, Izzy is suing. Holy mackerel!
And there's actually a point, Mitch, where I forget which it was, but I'm on the phone with the then band's attorney, Lori Soriano, who I love. She's a sweetheart, and there's going to be a deposition, and she goes, I don't even know why I'm going. I go, what do you mean? You're our attorney. She goes, Doug, at this point in time, you've been through so much litigation, you know 10 times what I know.
They could just take out a greatest hits of all the transcriptions.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
Just go ahead. He's being sued for this. Yeah, go back to the case 3 months ago and pull out paragraph 2.
Yeah.
All right. So here let's get back to Adler leaves. You're in this. You got to get another album made. I know the record company is saying, "Hey, strike while the iron's hot."
Mm-hmm.
Use Your Illusions is not coming together very well because Adler's gone, and now you got to find a new drummer. Tell me a little bit about the Use Your Illusion, and of course the decision to make 2 albums. There's been a lot of talk of Axel wanted a double album. Alan Niven and yourself and the record company said, no, let's do 2 of 1. And some others said, no, let's just pick the 10 best songs. God damn it.
Yeah, right. Yeah, there was a lot of controversy over how that should be done.
Right.
And Axel's a funny guy. He likes doing things for history's sake.
Right.
Things that have never been, doesn't matter if they make any sense. He wants to go down in history for being the first guy, well, having the band be the first entity to have number 1 and number 2 in the Billboard charts.
Right.
Hadn't been done before. And another example of that is when I told them that the longest held note in music history was done by Russell Hitchcock of Air Supply.
There you go.
And so Axel has to break that by, I think it was a song on Spaghetti Incident. I forget, but when he had the chance, once I told him that, of course, he had to redo that. So he owned that record so he could put that pelt on his belt.
You mentioned Spaghetti Incident. That one is another one we should talk about. I mean, I don't know. Was that a good idea?
Yeah, retrospectively, probably not. The interesting thing, the entire intent behind that was the guys wanted to put something out that showed what their roots were, as opposed to just being asked that question over and over and over and over and over. So that's the sole intent behind that.
Okay. And I know I'm jumping everywhere. I'm trying to focus.
No. You know what? We should probably talk about Lies, because that was actually really interesting. And by the way, Mitch, the one thing,
because it is a real lie. There's a live section that was actually never live.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
But okay, quickly, Use Your Illusions. Song Get in the Ring. They may have been treated poorly by some media, but you're calling out Andy Sesher. You're calling out Bob Guccione Jr., who, like him or not, had a powerful media empire, certainly at that time.
No doubt, yeah.
Media is your friend, especially in the early days of a band. Did management, did you, or and I guess Alan was out of it at that time, but did you go to the band and say, listen, you want to write a song about bad magazines, go, knock yourself, but don't name names. Don't do that. You know what?
I mean, in all fairness to Alan, I have to say that the one difference between him and I, we have a differing philosophy on that. Alan has absolutely no problem helping shape because of his producer experience.
Right.
I've never, that's never been me. So I have this other philosophy that goes something like this, Mitch. I think that every male that I've ever met wants to be remembered for something when they pass.
Right.
Which is why, and I'll draw an analogy. When you see a truck that says Johnson and Sons Plumbing, that's not for the fucking kids.
Right.
That's for old man Johnson, who's hoping that when he dies, they don't change the name of that company.
Right.
So I've never been the type to say, hey, I'm going to help shape how you want to be remembered when you die. So to that end, I never really got involved in the creative process like Alan did. Right or wrong, I just never did.
Right.
So we never did have that conversation, Axel and I. I think that Zutot tried, in all fairness to Zoot. And I will speak to my relationship with Zutot. I've never had one because he was very close with Alan.
Right.
And he was close to Axel. And I think that I kind of got in the middle of that relationship, certainly not knowingly. But Axel was confiding in me in a place that I think Zutat used to fill that.
Right.
So yeah, Zoot and I were never close. I think Tom did some fantastic things for the band, clearly, particularly in the early stages. Yeah, anyway, Mitch, so the one thing, again, that I hope to get across in talking to you is I loved and continue to care a lot about Alan Niven. I loved Slash, Duff, Axel, Izzy, Steven, Matt, all the people that I worked with. My whole deal is family. It's always tried to be family.
Right.
And I never wanted there to be factions. I never wanted there to be fighting. And it was always my goal to be the peacekeeper. So, to that end, let's go to Barcelona, Spain, if we can.
Sure.
To the purported Doug gets involved in the signing away of the band's rights.
Okay, because that's certainly one of the topics.
Yeah. Well, you know what? I mean, it boggles my mind that Slash has the remembrance that he does. And I've never had the opportunity to talk to him about it.
And Duff, too. Both of them in their books.
Know.
They both say that there was some trickery involved, that you had somehow just had them sign some papers, and then they came to you and said, but you're Guns N' Roses manager. And you
they never came to me.
Okay.
And here's why, Mitch. The reality is, back then, the date was July 5th, 1993.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll tell you what their belief is, and then I'll tell you what reality was. Their belief is I get summoned to Axel's room.
Right.
And Laurie Soriano happens to be in Barcelona to watch those shows.
Okay.
So Axel knows that. So he purportedly tells me to draft an agreement with Laurie that day, saying that the band Slash and Duff are giving up their name in Guns N' Roses. And if they don't sign it, he's not going on stage.
Did that happen?
So purportedly, I walk in and get Slash and Duff to sign it.
Okay.
On July 5th, 1993, I'm in Mission Viejo, California at the birth of my first son, Jacob Samuel Goldstein. I had I completely had no fucking clue what was happening. Nobody was able to reach me. My wife was in 14 hours of labor. I found out about it post-fact, but the reality was, I know because of all my experience in litigation, if you say sign this or I'm not playing and we could potentially have a riot, that's signed under duress.
Right, which is legal grounds for having it dismissed.
Totally. So A, it wasn't me, and B, I would never have done it because they're my fucking family and I love them. B, I'm on a different fucking continent. C, I know the validity of the contract is moot because it would be thrown out under duress. So it wasn't me. I mean, you can certainly figure out by process of elimination who it would have been. At that point, the tour manager's next up.
Right. And who was the tour? Was that John at the time? John Reese, or was it there? Okay.
Yeah, that was John.
So John. Okay, so then John Reese, and I got to watch my words. I don't want to say conspired, but got together.
I don't think so.
Got together with
John
Axel.
Yeah, I think John didn't have any knowledge of things like duress. I mean, John certainly he wasn't involved in all the litigation that I was.
Right.
I think John was merely following the orders of Axel and thought that he was doing the right thing. I'm not calling John out on this at all.
And John's still very much involved in the rock scene for folks that are listening. He's got Mayhem Festival, Not Fest, Uproar.
Oh my God, John's killing it in the music industry.
Oh yeah. In fact,
he's killing it. But at the time, again, I in no way, shape, or form fault John because he was merely following what he thought were Axel's orders. He had no idea of what duress was. And I think, honestly, all of us had seen so much damage in the St. Louis, Montreal riots. You know that. That's the thing, Mitch. Like Alan constantly says that that I wanted to keep things going to make money. That's absolutely factually untrue. The reality is, I had 225 people that were looking to me for employment,
right?
Safe employment, by the way,
right?
And I had a responsibility to all of those guys, including all of the band members.
Were the 225 on retainer, where you had the drum tech and the this and that all being paid while the band was not not on the road?
And not all of them, Mitch. Okay. No, not all of them. You know, if I had a deal with like we had our immediate techs, like the drum techs, the and your monitor engineer,
right?
Kind of the guys who were on the stage, right?
Mike Fasano.
But then you have like a lighting company. It's not my responsibility to pay them. Although what we used to do when we had unforeseen breaks in the action, I would give everybody a little bit of money, and that was something that I used to talk through with Slash. Right. See, that's kind of a point that I keep mentioning, but really I haven't stated it. Slash and I, for the most part, ran all the band's business.
Really?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. No question. Slash used to come to my room at 10 a.m. and we would go through all of the band's decisions that had to be made. And we'd get on the phone for 3 hours and do interviews.
Right.
And in all fairness to Duff, he was also always willing to get involved with us when it came to any decisions that Slash and I couldn't agree on. Duff always had a really cool head.
Right. But were they lucid at that time? I mean, those were the big drug days, or the drinking days, more likely in Slash's case. But
yeah, well, Slash wouldn't start drinking until the afternoon for the most part.
Okay.
So he would pass out at somewhere between 2 and 4 in the morning, and then he'd be knocking at my door at 10 a.m.
Okay. So now I'm gonna do some rapid fire stuff. Back to the Use Your Illusion. It has been said that there were video crews following around the band for those 2.5 years.
Absolutely.
That footage exists.
Somewhere in a vault in LA, there are on stage, off stage, hotel, you name it. They shot everything we did for 2.5 years. And it's a collective, the band owns that stuff.
Right.
All of them would have to sign off on releasing it. And, in a perfect scenario of marketing, you would drop that during your, either before or
right
after
before a reunion tour. Right.
Yeah, exactly.
Because, with 2.5 years of footage sitting in a vault, one could easily estimate that you have a killer 2-hour DVD plus a whole bunch of bonus features.
Oh, hell yes!
I mean, easily, right?
Easily.
Well, let's hope that comes out. Use Your Illusion tour. The band went from 5 guys to about 87 people on stage.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Which
on stage alone.
which I really, as a fan, because what is this? 87. So I was 20.
Use Your Illusion is 91.
Right. So how old was I? I was 23. I really, as a rock fan, loved live shows. I love the warts. I love the feedback. I love when there's a mistake because it's truly live.
Yeah.
When I saw them open for Aerosmith, I was impressed. And then I saw this thing with brass and with girls. And it just wasn't Guns N' Roses. It really felt like I had gone to a Barnum and Bailey show.
But Mitch, I have my own opinion as to why that happened, and it kind of goes towards Axel as a human being. And and nobody really knows this about Axel. Everybody knows that he's late, blah, blah, blah. They don't know why.
Right.
Axel has this incredible inherent fear of not being able to pull it off live. Right. So if you can, if you can be the wizard behind the curtain by throwing horn players and keyboardists and, midgets and whatever up to deviate the attention away from you possibly squeaking in your voice.
Okay, fair enough.
And then it was actually my idea. I went to the band when we did the Skin and Bones tour, where we lost all that stuff. And I said, guys, let's do Song Remains the Same. One light bar, no risers, just set up our fucking gear and play. And by far, Mitch, that was our most successful, financially, our most successful run.
And as a fan, it was one of the most pleasing shows. So would you say that it was a mistake to have 85 people on stage? Because I would say as a fan, what a disaster.
Mistake? I don't know. I mean, again, knowing Axel, once he gives, and he doesn't do it very, very often, by the way. Usually he was following what Slash would want to do. But when Axel kind of gives his directive, if you will, for lack of a better term, we will confront him and say, is this really the right thing to be doing? And if he says, yeah, then collectively, we pretty much all agreed, okay, let's try it.
Okay. All right. So, I look at the, Live in Japan DVD and I go,
by the way, can I tell you the story behind that? That's a fucking great story.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So, I watched your Niven 3-part interview. Right. And he talks about how November Rain sucks and Estranged sucks and they're really expensive. So I'm a guy who believes in turning lemons into lemonade. So I get this phone call from Eddie Rosenblatt. He says, you need to come up here. We need to talk. Okay. So I go up there and he says, I'm out of the video making business with you. Okay. Because of the cost. Yes. Okay. No problem. So I say, how about this? You'll still pay for the videos out of our royalties. And I will, for the right to do that, I will give you a 15% distribution fee and we will own 85% of our videos. He says, okay, we made $40 million fucking dollars on that video release from Japan.
Wow. How
many November Rain and Estranged videos can you make with that?
Quite a few, I would think.
Right. Yeah. So, and I would argue in a contrary position to Alan that, because I've spoken to a number of the creative people and business people at MTV, and while Welcome to the Jungle certainly was a time period piece, and Sweet Child of Mine absolutely launched the band, and that was all Alan, and I will give him all of the credit in the world for that. But the reality is when you talk to the creative people and the business people at MTV, what got them the Lifetime Achievement Awards was the Going Over the Top, was the November Rain and the Estranged videos, because they were cinematographic pieces.
Right.
They were what Michael Jackson was trying to do. And in fact, Mitch, I recently posted about the Bruno Mars hit,
right,
which is a fantastic song, one of the best songs of the decade, yet it's not supported by a great video, and I don't get it.
Well,
it's part of the marketing to me is to have a great video that coincides with the hit. I think you owe that to your fans.
Yeah, I agree, but I don't know. Is that old school thinking that both of us have, that you need I mean, it's hard to know what markets anymore. You can sort of throw a lyric video on YouTube now and people get all excited. I'm baffled by the whole how do you market stuff these days.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Because I see these lyric videos popping up, and as a reporter, people send me links to lyric videos.
Right.
And I click on them and I go, why am I watching this?
Well, you just answered it though. Mitch, you just answered it. If they actually had a quality piece, you'd go, it's just another form of marketing the song.
Yeah.
And I don't think that'll ever go out of style, really, because you're noticing it and you are seeing it as a detractor.
Yeah. Well, the lyric videos I am.
That's what I mean. Absolutely.
I was at the Montreal Olympic Stadium show in '92, but before we get to that, well, listen, I was wise because I had seen, and I think we spoke about this earlier, Axel at Saratoga Springs opening up for Aerosmith. Somebody threw a bottle. The band disappeared from the stage. Yep. Then I saw them at Saratoga Springs in '91 in June. Sebastian Bach backed into the speakers. They all fell down. Slash was riding around the stage on a bicycle. The band came on at 1 a.m, proceeded to play till 4 a.m. All Use Your Illusion material, which, hey, sounds great, except the album hadn't come out yet. So we all sat there and went, we don't know these songs. So when they came to Montreal, when he threw the mic down, I went, I'm out of here.
Right, yeah, but absolutely.
But I want to get into that.
I wish I could have done that.
I bet you do. But before we get to that, I just want to ask you, you had another guy on staff called Barry Fay. And
he was a promoter. Yeah, he was a promoter. Fayline was the name of his company in Colorado. Yep.
Right. And he talks famously about a show in Denver on that tour, which actually took place after Montreal, where the band gets on stage, and Axel was having all kinds of voice problems and so on and so forth.
Mm-hmm.
Band gets on stage, the show starts, they're playing, Axel walks off the stage, gets into a limousine and says, drive me to wherever. And of course, nobody tells Slash, nobody tells Duff. They do a punk song, Attitude. They do another one. They go into a guitar solo. And
they pretty much had their B set together by that point, Mitch.
Right. And somebody, whether it's Barry or you or John or somebody, phones the limo driver and says, get back to the venue. The limo driver says, no. My client wants to go to the hotel. And to which, at that time, the limo driver said, we are your client. Get him here. Now the limousine arrives back to the venue, surrounded by security guards who shove Axel back on stage and say, play, or this is the last breath you'll take. Something like that. Something like that, right?
Yeah, actually, I've heard that Barry told people he pulled a gun on Axel. Right. You know what? I mean, it makes for great stories, but it's fucking horseshit.
So what is the story of Denver?
I don't know. I don't know if you've ever gone through this, Mitch. I go through it all the time because I have a bit of a temper.
Right.
So when you leave the stage, or in my case, when I am in a relationship and I lose my cool, I walk out the door.
Right. Which Axel did in Denver.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So he leaves, and then what I go through when I lose my cool is, fuck, now I'm embarrassed and I need to find a way to actually get back to what I was doing because I don't want to be the guy who split.
Right.
Axel told the limo driver to pull it around.
Okay.
There were no threats. There was no security. Myself and Earl Gabadon, Axel's security guy, met him at the car and said, everything okay? He said, yeah, I'm just fucking pissed off. You know, I can't sing the way that I'd like to. I shouldn't be doing this fucking tour. So I talked to him for like 10 minutes and he ends up going back. So I don't know why Barry told the story that he did. You know, Barry also called me a glorified security guy. So,
but I have heard the story from other people who discount the gun. They say, no, Barry's wrong. There was no gun. But there were security guards who stood at the top of the stairs and on stage and said, you ain't fucking coming off this stage. So I have heard a variation, but it's still somewhat the same.
Well, because I don't remember it that way, Mitch. The only time I remember something like that was actually in Germany, where they locked us in. They just said, fuck you, you're going nowhere. And I had to get special permission from the promoter to allow the wives to go back to the hotel.
Oh, that's funny. Now, why would Germany lock you in?
I don't know. With a last name like Goldstein, I'm afraid to ask those questions.
There you go. So, all right. So we go back a couple of weeks. Axel had taken 3 or 4 shows off because of his voice. Show up in Montreal. Faith No More does their set. Metallica comes on. Fire happens. James gets burned. Now, you suggested in a previous conversation to me that was somewhat of Metallica's own mistake because they had changed the configuration of the set.
Yeah, what ended up happening, and you know, and Lars is a great guy, and whatever. But the reality is, Jake Berry, who was Metallica's production manager, and Lars, unbeknownst to the rest of us, they took the set that we were collectively using, which had grating, metal grating, so you could see through the stage.
Right, you could put a light underneath and give effects, and smoke could come up and all that stuff. Okay,
you got it. Yeah, so Lars is, I'm told, the reason why he does it is because the first 50 rows, their sight lines are impaired. They can't see Lars, and so instead of the monitors, the wedges that the band uses to hear themselves, instead of them being on top of the deck, he puts them sub-deck underneath. And in doing so, some of the pyro cues for Metallica had to be changed.
Right.
So I've never heard, now, was it explained to James and he forgot? Or was it just never communicated to him? But in either case, that's why James blew up. He was standing on a pyro cue that before that had not been a pyro cue.
Right. So Montreal is the first show where this reconfiguration has taken place.
Yeah. And by the way, what Axel was doing in the off time was seeing a guy named Dr. Hans von Leyden, who was the president of the Oncology Association internationally. He was like this 92-year-old guy, worked out of UCLA. And when everybody else was saying operate on singers, this guy was figuring a way to get them to not operate. So Axel's seeing him because we had canceled some shows, and we come back. We agree to do Montreal primarily because Metallica's saying, you know, we can't wait anymore, and we're just going to fucking do these shows without you if that's what it takes.
Right.
So
which they could have done contractually. They could have.
Sure. No question.
Let me ask the obvious question before we finish the story. Was Axel sick?
Very.
Okay.
Yeah, very.
It wasn't PR. It wasn't, it wasn't.
Fuck no.
Okay.
No, I mean, everybody talks about he's got the greatest range in history. Well, that, I mean, let me be analogous to there. If you're the strongest man in the world, then you have a lot of damages to your muscle, to your muscles, because you're constantly challenging it to move past the point that you were at before.
Okay.
So Axel was constantly having issues with his throat. Combine that with his fear of getting on stage and failing. That's the causation between the whole, 4 hours to get ready for a show.
Yeah, and I've heard a lot about Axel's stage fright, that it's legendary.
It is.
Right.
I don't even know if it's stage fright, Mitch. It's like I would call it a fear of failing. He's like, and I think there's a difference between the two.
I agree. And listen, I'll give Axel this. When he does perform, even now, and I've seen him the last few years, you can tell that he cares about the quality. DJ Ashbaugh, Bumblefoot, and all, they're not Slash and all that.
Yeah.
But it still sounded great. So you could see that, okay, he's late, but he comes on, he does 36 songs. He doesn't show up 4 hours late and do 10 songs and leave.
Exactly. Well, Mitch, I've been watching a lot of the G&R footage from when I was with them.
Right.
Because back then, and maybe it's just me, but back then, we had no fucking idea that we were one of the top bands in the world. No clue.
Right.
We were just a family having fun, going city to city. Fucking Partridge Family. I mean, we were setting up and doing our shows, but I look back on the performances of the guys that I was representing, fuck, they were amazing. Not just vocally or Slash's guitar, but actually the way that they moved about the stage.
Yeah.
Incredible. I can't believe that we went that many shows without somebody getting knocked over because they were constantly running around and jumping off of shit.
Yeah. Sorry, I'm just thinking back to Montreal before we get too far away.
Of course.
So I was at that show. James goes up, and by the way, I'm glad he's all right because I love Metallica.
Me too. Yeah,
We sat in those horrible, hard plastic seats at the Olympic Stadium for, I guess it was like 4 hours. I think they had like gone up in smoke by like 7 o'clock at night, and I think by 11 o'clock Axel comes on.
Really? I don't remember it that way, Mitch. I thought because I had called the hotel.
I just remember being very, very long, like 3 or 4 hours of waiting. I mean, listen, I could be wrong. This was still, 23 years ago.
I thought it was like 2.5, but
maybe.
Yeah, still a long time. I mean, look, Metallica's contention is Axel had the ability to come on and be the hero,
right?
And I would say if it was, if it was David Lee Roth, who I worked for in the past,
right?
Absolutely, he would have been there. He would have done it. But knowing the years and years and years that I had been with Axel and watching his preparation and knowing that he had been at Hans von Leyden's office every fucking day during that downtime, I knew he wasn't going to get there quick. There was no way because he does these vocal warm-ups that take him about an hour.
Right.
And because of all the running and jumping he does, he's got horrible ankles and knees. And so he gets those worked on. I mean, he has this whole procedure to go through before he even goes, and he shortened that.
Right. And, but now he comes on, and I remember the band did, I think, 7 songs, and then he sat down in front of the drum riser and said, your promoter is going to refund you. I'm out of here, and put the mic down.
Yeah,
which caused a big thing for Donald K. Donald. I don't know if you remember Donald K. Donald.
Real well. Yeah, real well.
But Donald K. Donald famously in the Gazette the next day said, you got a show. If you add up all the minutes between Faith No More, Metallica, and Guns N' Roses, you got about an hour and a half.
Yeah, that's right. I'd forgotten that, Mitch. Yeah.
you got a show. Leave me alone. And there was a class action suit, which I don't believe was successful because I certainly saw no money out of it. But could nothing have been done? Did Axel, did his voice give out? Was he just...
Oh my, Mitch, he came over to me after the 4th song and literally said, that's it, I'm fucked, I can't sing. I went, holy shit, what the fuck are we gonna do? So he attempted a couple more songs, but he couldn't even talk. Okay. So when I watch the Metallica movie and I see Jason Newsted talking about, I was drinking champagne back with Axel and there was nothing wrong. First off, Axel never would have had Jason Newsted in his fucking dressing room in a million fucking years.
Right.
Not in a million fucking years. And Axel was really, really, really bummed. Him and Slash and Duff all sat around talking about how fucked it was and how are we going to handle it. There was nobody else in the fucking dressing room. It was us.
And of course, you got stuck there because a riot ensued.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yet again. Yeah.
Yet again. But was there no thought in the next few days or coming weeks to put out a press release? Axel came back to Montreal 14 years later. Was there no thought from management to say, okay, let's come back and play at the Four?
Absolutely. No, we absolutely talked about that. We were going to come back and do a show, and we were told by the promoter, no thanks.
Right, which is sort of what I'd heard, that the promoters had banned Axel from the city, and that's why it took...
Yeah, Axel always wanted to make things right, but one of the things that's been frustrating for me, Mitch, and he does this with his own band members. Axel loves Slash and Duff and Matt, Izzy, obviously, because of growing up with him. He loves those guys. He doesn't really know how to communicate it. So, whenever we'd have some shit go down, the band was kind of left not really understanding why things were happening.
Right.
I would try and communicate Axel's position, but it's always been pretty frustrating to me that Axel refuses to stick up for himself in any situation.
Right.
Which brings me to 1 in a Million, Mitch.
That great song. That, and then Look at Your Game, Girl. The
right.
1 in a Million. Okay, let's do it. It talks about. It has the N word. I don't want to say it.
Absolutely.
It talks about the F word. You know. F.
Yeah. Yeah, and actually, literally, all he was trying to do is poke fun of a redneck. He was a redneck, homophobe, racist when he arrived in Los Angeles. And he was actually poking fun at that kind of mentality. He was like, I can't believe I arrived in LA and had all these preconceived notions about people that I knew nothing about.
Right.
But instead of coming out and just putting it that fucking simply, he doesn't care what people think about him. He just doesn't fucking care. So I would beg him, please, you're killing me. Tell your side of the story. And he'd go, I'm not interested. If they can't figure that out, Doug, then fuck them. If they really think that's who I am, then fuck them.
But it could have been better framed, no? I mean,
I would agree.
Okay.
But Mitch, again, I'm begging him to frame it that way because they don't want to hear it from me.
Okay, fair enough. I mean, the song musically is a good sounding song. Lyrically, it could have been tweaked. All right. Look at Your Game, Girl. The Charles Manson cover, though, that one is pretty intense because.
Well, he's aligning himself. Yeah, he's aligning himself with Manson.
Right, and of course he gets royalties off of it. It's.
Yeah, and again, that was him saying everybody thinks I'm fucking crazy like this guy's fucking crazy.
Right.
I'm not as fucking crazy as that guy, but everybody thinks I am. And again, Mitch, I'm begging, please fucking explain yourself.
But
and he refuses to.
But that caused a riff, if I got my story straight, with the band members, like Slash. They were like.
So did 1 in a Million.
Right, exactly. Both songs.
Slash's mother, rest in peace, she was this incredibly beautiful African-American woman, as was his grandmother.
Right.
And so, I mean, Slash is put in this untenable position with 1 in a Million coming out, having to explain that to his own mother.
Right, which is not pleasant.
Fuck no, it ain't. No, not at all.
So, and that's where sort of that rift, I guess, with Slash starts. And since we're on that, let's finish this with one more song that had trouble. Sympathy for the Devil. They bring in what was his name? Paul Tobias, was that his name?
Yeah. And you know what? I mean, the interesting thing about that, Mitch, is literally from the day Axel brought in Paul Tobias, his childhood friend, Axel would say he's only here until you find somebody to replace him.
Right.
And I told Slash, Duff, Matt, time and time again, because they would call me and complain, this guy's a fucking shitty guitar player. We don't want him in the band. And I'd say, guys, he's stated hundreds of times already. Find somebody else. And it used to baffle me that they never put anybody else in place. I was like, I can't do anything. You guys aren't helping me.
Right.
He's told you have an open window to put this guy out of the band, yet they weren't bringing anybody else in.
But should they have been working on that song at all? I mean, it's a Rolling Stones cover. They had to make a new album. They didn't get a new album done. I mean, was it just?
Yeah, I think, you know what? I really don't remember that, Mitch. I really don't remember the circumstances around Sympathy for the Devil. I think that, I mean, you'd know better than I would. I think that was another soundtrack deal.
It was.
Right.
For a Tom Cruise movie, I believe.
Another Tom Cruise movie, huh?
Something about Tom Cruise. Maybe.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Where else do we have? Recently, you have been quoted from Rolling Stone Brazil, which I know is your favorite magazine these days, right?
Yeah.
That says that all of this stuff that's going on with Slash and Axel really is Michael Jackson's fault.
You know, and Mitch, I'm glad you're asking that question because, in all fairness, I should have said when Axel fell out of love with Slash is this instance. This isn't what caused the. It's not Slash's side, clearly.
Right.
But I was there. I was living it. Axel was in tears when Slash went to play with Michael. We had absolute knowledge of the allegations. Axel had courageously spoken about his childhood in Rolling Stone. The being molested by his birth father at age 2, and it was absolutely incomprehensible to him that Slash, who he loved and felt like was his partner all the way down the line in Guns N' Roses, would actually go against how he felt towards child molestation,
right?
Particularly over a big screen TV. That was the straw that broke the camel's back. But in fairness, I didn't say that's not why Slash and Duff left. No way, not even close. But that is when Axel disengaged as to thinking that Slash was his partner in Guns N' Roses.
And friend, and of course, so it was a sense of betrayal, I guess.
Yeah, big time.
2009. You apparently write a letter to Axel that ends up on the internet.
Yeah.
First, obvious question. Did you write that letter?
Yep.
Okay. Now, the contents. It talks about the sale of Big FD to Sanctuary. It talks about Merc. Talks about a whole bunch of stuff.
Yeah.
Do you know if Axel ever read the letter? Did he ever get back to you? And what motivated you to put that out in the public? Because, if you're trying to get a relationship back together...
Well, you know what? Interesting enough, I didn't put it out in the public. I actually sent it. I gave it to Betta. Right. Next thing I know, it's on the internet.
Right.
In no way, shape, or form did I expect that to become public knowledge.
Right.
I alluded to my 2 bites at the apple, Mitch. One in my childhood with my father and my brother, and then again with Niven and Axel. And point of fact, Axel's birthday is the day after my brother's.
Okay.
So I have this love for Axel, this understanding of who he is, because I was fucking roommates with a guy who was Axel Rose growing up.
Right, your brother.
Totally. Yeah, totally.
Okay, so now I have the letter in front of me.
Okay.
You talk about wanting to make him 10 to 20 million in 2010 by starting something called the Rose Festival.
Yeah, and where that came from actually is, everybody's doing the Warp festivals, and so I thought, you know what, Axel, you could actually be the producer of your own festivals. Why not? Why not? He loves, that's an interesting part of history. Nirvana.
Right.
He brought Nirvana to the band. He loved Kurt Cobain. The whole Courtney thing, he hated her, but the reality is he absolutely...
A lot of people seem to hate her from what I understand.
I know, yeah.
And I've never met her, so I can't say anything, but I get a lot of that.
Well, Kurt, before he passed, he gave his version of the story. Axel, as is always, never did. But I was with him and Stephanie, and we were backstage at the MTV Awards, and Courtney is saying, hey, look, it's Asshole Rose. Hey, asshole. That's what caused Axel to go up to Kurt and say, tell your fucking girlfriend to shut her fucking mouth.
Okay.
It wasn't, I mean, Kurt makes it sound like they said, you know, hey, buddy. And all of a sudden he came over. It wasn't that at all. Courtney's yelling top of her lungs, hey, Asshole Rose. Which hurt us, you know, I mean, you know, I have this opinion that hurt is not, or the anger, I'm sorry, anger is not a primary emotion.
Right.
It's actually a secondary, tertiary emotion based upon something else. And 90% of the times it's hurt. And I think Axel's feelings were really hurt because he loved Kurt.
Right.
And didn't expect what he got.
Would you say Axel is misunderstood?
Completely. Okay. Even by his own band members. He loves those guys. He loved those guys. I can't speak to today. But
well, today doesn't seem so bad. He's had Duff play with him. He's had Izzy
absolutely.
play with him. He stayed very loyal to Dizzy. Now, okay, people are going to say Dizzy was not original band, but whatever.
Right.
But
I'd have to say, Mitch, that my perception has always been Axel loved them way more than they knew. And people would argue with me, actions speak louder than words. But, you know, Slash would come to me, and again, I had the ability to grow up with a manic depressive in my room.
Right.
And so Slash would come up to me and say, you know, he's acting like an irrational fucking asshole. And I'd go, oh, right, this is the point where I try and defend him for his irrational acts.
Right.
That can't be done.
Do you think Axel is still manic depressive, or do you think that he's managed to get that under control?
I don't think that ever goes away. I mean, I actually am something called hypothymic,
right?
Which I don't have the depressive side, but I absolutely have the manic side,
right?
And that's something that it never goes away. It never goes away.
And I just want to quickly go back to the Rose Festival, because I'm just reading the details, and it says it would have been a tour where you could have gotten Van Halen on the front part, and boy, can you just imagine Guns N' Roses with Van Halen in 2010? That would have been fantastic.
My God. Absolutely.
They had just done.
I think there's a lot of great shit in that letter, by the way.
Yeah. I mean, listen, you have a whole idea about a video for If the World using stock footage, and you mentioned your wedding out in Hawaii, which I do want to get to Hawaii real quick. There's a website called HawaiiLife.com where you were. See, I found everything. Where you were,
Mitch.
Where you were blogging, and you said, I've been a Hawaii Life real estate broker for 5 months now, and I'm going to start sharing stories about Axel Rose and Slash and the rest of the guys. Now, I've only been able to find one posting from 2012.
Yeah.
You moved out to Hawaii for a while? You did the real estate thing? Okay.
Yeah, you know what? I had originally fallen in love with the place when I took Slash.
How can you not?
Right? Yeah, right.
It's Hawaii.
So, yeah, and at one point when the band was rolling really good, I went to Axel, Slash, and Duff and said, actually, you know, I need to back up. After taking Slash there in an attempt to get him clean, which actually worked, I fell in love with the place. Duff and I went in halves on a condo there.
Right.
And I had met my first wife on my trip with Slash.
Quickly, where in Hawaii? Because we have 5 islands.
The Big Island.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah, the resort area, which is when you come out of the airport, you make a left and go towards the north part of the island.
Mm-hmm.
We were in the Waikoloa area.
Listen, there's no part of Hawaii that's not beautiful. So,
true that. Yeah.
So there's no point in me going, oh, because I could just do that with everything you mentioned.
Yeah.
I love Molokai.
At one point, I bought a very lovely home and went to the band members, went to Slash, Duff, and Axel and said, look, it's 3 hours earlier there. So when you're calling me at 4 in the morning, it's actually only 1.
Right.
I can do my business from anywhere in the world. And they totally supported it. I didn't end up going at that point, but in 2002, my kids were living with my ex-wife in Hawaii, and from 2000 to 2002, Mitch, I literally took a plane on every Friday. American Airlines left at 5:50. I'd get into Hawaii. I hung out with my kids until Sunday at 10:50, and I'd fly back, and I'd be in the office by 5:30 in the morning, and I never missed a weekend for 2 years straight.
Wow.
So I came to Merck and said, after Axel had fired me, Merck was going to keep me around. And I said, look, Merck, I miss my kids. I can't do this. He made me give half of my money back, but I did that to go be a father.
Which is the respectable thing to do, by the way.
Thank you. Yeah. No, I love my kids to death. In fact, my son, Jake, he has a #1 hit on K-Rock in LA. His band's called Honey, Hunny, and the track's called Cry For Me. It's a brilliant alternative song.
I'm going to have to check that out. Now, we're getting on to 2 hours now, so I think we probably should start winding it down. There's so much Slash leaving, Duff leaving, but I would be remiss if I didn't ask you about When Pigs Fly. That's sort of the new management company you've put together. All kinds of bands on there. Who is sort of the guys you're pushing right now? What's their album? Are you back in the game?
I've got a number of things happening. One of the bands that I absolutely love, which is probably the reason why I spoke to Rolling Stone Brazil, is an act called Havana. Right. They're a metal band. Mateus is the leader of the band. I speak to him pretty much every day. They're fantastic. I think that they will grow out of the South America, UK, Europe scene.
Right.
Kind of similar to Sepultura, if you will.
Yep.
There's a group called Beautiful Disaster, which has Mike Orlando of Adrenaline Mob.
Yep.
And
who just played on the Jeff Scott Soto album.
Yeah, I tell you what, Mike's a phenomenal player.
Oh, absolutely. And the track that he plays on Inside the Vertigo, if I could just find it, I have the CD in front of me, actually.
Oh, nice.
Of course, I have a pile of about 400 CDs right in front of me.
Right.
But yeah, that's a great tune.
Yeah. Yeah, and the drummers from Breaking Benjamin, before that he played with Zakk Wylde and Black Label. But they've really written I call it a gettable album. In other words, where Adrenaline Mob would never be played on radio. These songs are absolutely designed to get on AOR, album oriented. So they're another one. And then there's this other group that I'm really anxious to get going called Dead Day Revolution.
Okay.
The leader of that band is a guy named Mike Sandoz. And Mike's one of those brilliant guys. For a job, he works with different oil companies, and he tells them where to drill next. But these guys it's a 3-piece, very punk oriented. And so I've already told you about a metal. I've told you about a album oriented, and I've told you about a punk, and I'm having a blast. And then lastly, I'm actually helping produce an 18-year-old kid named Trevor Daring, who was accepted to Berklee School of Music.
Nice.
And very John Mayer, although I'm trying to get away from him sounding too much like John Mayer.
Right. You don't want to be a knockoff. You want
to
be
original.
Exactly.
But everybody that's heard him absolutely loves him. He's a talented young kid, very thankful that I'm involved in his career. And then Mitch, I've got some television and film projects going as well. So I'm pretty busy these days, but I'm enjoying it. I love it.
Oh, I can imagine. And of course, in Montreal, we have a heavy Montreal festival that takes place in August. And it would be nice to see some of those bands come up here, get a few new metal bands going on.
Absolutely.
There. You know what? I've started to pack away my notes, but the last one I have sitting in front of me is Duff McKagan in a 1990 interview where he says, "I got tired of Guns N' Roses being a dictatorship under Axel Rose." Was that, well, he said, "I got tired of the band being run entirely by Axel Rose." I
think towards the end, that's absolutely what happened, Mitch. Right. again, in the Brazil thing, I was talking primarily, well, not primarily, absolutely about Axel's point that he kind of stepped out.
Right.
For Slash and Duff, it was trying to turn it into a 3-guitar band. That really broke Slash's heart.
Right.
He was like, the guy's like one of the greatest guitar players of all time. Yeah, Axel wants him to give up his solos with Zakk Wylde or Dave Navarro or one of these other cats, and he just wasn't willing to do it, and I can't say I blame him.
Right.
That's when he kind of bowed out. And Duff really, for all intents and purposes, Duff was going to hang around to see what was coming next. But it kind of stagnated. Duff is showing up every night, and he's pretty much the only one.
Right.
And it was testing his sobriety. It was testing his creativity. I know the article that you're talking about, actually 99, I think.
Right.
I think you had said 90. I think it was 99.
No, 99. If I said 90, I made a mistake, but no, it's 1999. And you don't want to hear the other article I have right after. It's where it's an article about Big FD Entertainment suing Slash and Duff for monies. We'll skip that one on this interview.
What? No, I've never sued that.
Oh, well, let me see here. It says Guns N' Roses management company Big FD, headed up by Doug Goldstein, is suing former band members Slash and Dov McKagan for monies owed, according to papers filed in Los Angeles County Superior Court on December 14th. What does it say here? It says the key issue apparently lies with the definition and timeline of what is a tour cycle, says legal counsel Bert Dexler. Right. And it goes on.
Wow, you know what? I absolutely have zero knowledge of that. If I did that, shame on me.
It says, and I'll just finish just in case this jogs your memory. It says McKagan is also accused of breaching the management contract by hiring independent managers in 1997 and again in 1999.
Wow. It's sad to say I actually have zero knowledge of that.
I'm not surprised.
I have zero recollection of that.
I wouldn't be surprised because in big corp, for example, Coca-Cola decides to sue somebody. Not everybody in Coca-Cola is going to know about it. That's why there's a legal department, and that's why.
Mitch, in all fairness, I think I would have had to know. Bert Dykster's not going to just do that without my knowledge. I just really, I just don't recall doing that. And again, shame on me. Those guys were my family. I loved them. So I can only say that I must have been hurt over something. But, and I get to that end, Mitch, you know what? I would absolutely love to sit with Slash and Duff at some point, and Axel at a different meeting, obviously. But I would love to sit with those guys and dispel some of the shit that they think about me. Again, they were and continue to be my family. I loved those guys. And there's nothing in the world that I wouldn't have done for them.
Well, that's good to hear. And hopefully at some point you could sit down with Alan and maybe try to rebuild some bridges. I'm not sure he might be willing to do.
Like I said, I love Alan, but unfortunately he thinks I had designs on his job, and it's absolutely the antithesis, Mitch. I tried to no avail. I tried to keep him around. Shit, Slash and I battled that for a couple of years.
Yeah, was Slash trying to get him fired?
No. Slash and I would battle Axel. Axel would call us and say, fuck him, he's done. And I'd say, fuck you, he's my partner. That was happening every month.
Is there any reason why Axel and Alan just couldn't get along? Was it just personality?
It goes back to the same thing I had in my childhood, Mitch. It's that you have the tyrant.
Gotcha.
Niven liked to be a band member. He had his leather pants and his little booties and his gold necklaces and all that crap. And I wasn't that. I wore shorts and t-shirts, and I think the band liked that.
Right.
There was a point actually on the bus where Alan handed lyrics to a song to Axel, and Axel opened up the bus vent and let him sail, saying, I don't want my manager to be handing me songs. I want you to be my manager.
Well, listen, you know what? In that case, I can see both parts, because Alan with Great White helped put together some really
he made
great,
that band.
Sure, and he wrote some great lyrics and some great melodies and
very.
But I can also see Axel saying, "Hey, this is my band, and I don't need that." It's too bad. I mean, it's too bad that
it is. Yeah, it is. I mean, I just think that they were. Well, they were just two very, very, very different guys.
Right.
Very, very, very different. Peter Grant never would have said, "Hey, Jimmy," or "Hey, Robert, let's sit down and have a writing session."
Agreed. But, different bands call for different things. I think Great White needed Alan to do that for them, or they might not have.
They never would have had any kind of a career without Alan Niven, no question.
Absolutely. And as a fan for Guns N' Roses, what I find the most disheartening is that here is this band that could have been the next Rolling Stones, that could have been as big as U2. Instead of having this talk in 2015 of what should have been, we should have been talking about this tour coming up in the summer that's going to make $1 billion. And
well, and you know what? Again, I love that you kind of feed me fodder for this, Mitch.
Right.
Niven has inferred that I was doing it for the money. Point of fact, when my contract was done, and it came time for the renegotiation, I told the band, "Pay me $500 a week. I don't fucking care.
Right.
I love you guys. I'll do it for free. I don't fucking care." And I used to have my business manager at the time was a guy named Michael Oppenheim. And for 5 years, from 1989 till 1994, he would call me once a month and say, "We need to go over what you're making." And I'd tell him, "Fuck you. You're spoiling the fun. I don't want to know." So I never even knew what I was or wasn't making until we were all fucking done touring. I didn't want to have the finances sway me one way or another towards my decision-making processes regarding the band.
And even if you did, personally, I wouldn't fault you for that, because none of us do this for posterity. I mean, you don't pay the rent with, good feelings or good intentions. It takes money. It takes money.
Clearly, I knew I was doing just fine, but I didn't want to know to the penny, because I loved the people that I was working with, and I didn't want to have. To me, it was all about being creative, particularly when it comes to the touring.
Right.
That's really what I excelled at, and I think that was why Alan and I made a good partnership.
Right.
Alan was really good at the label stuff. I wasn't.
Right.
But Alan knew nothing about touring, absolutely nothing, and he let me run with that ball.
Fair enough. And so let's end on this, because we've hit 2 hours.
Yeah.
If Guns N' Roses reunited for 2016.
Yep.
What would be the value of that tour after all the tickets were sold and all the merch? Is that $1 billion tour?
It's yet to be seen. The problem with it, Mitch, is there's so many people that have been burned in the past. Because I've done a little bit of research as to what the value of that tour would be. And the fans all call for it. The business people that actually pay for it, they're a little skeptical.
Right, because the brand has been damaged by St. Louis, Montreal, Vancouver. Where else were there riots? Wasn't there one in Philadelphia too?
Actually, that was early days. Axel got arrested prior to the show.
Right.
I do want to say one thing, Mitch. Axel had a brilliant idea. We're in Tel Aviv, Israel, in 1992.
Right.
So imagine, if you will, Axel comes to me and says, "Hey, we'll open, but I want to do a show with us opening, and we'll take the least amount of money. Us opening, Pearl Jam second, U2 close."
Wow.
So I call I call Paul with U2 and I say, "Here's Axel's idea." He says, "We're fucking in." So I'm thinking, there's not a venue in the world that could hold this show.
No.
So I call Kelly Curtis, and I'm in a Quonset hut in Tel Aviv, Israel, and he answers the phone and leaves me on speaker. I go, Kelly? I go, Doug Goldstein. He says, what can I help you with? I said, Axel has this great idea. I run it down for him, and he says, not interested. I go, Kelly, with all due respect, don't you have a legal, moral obligation to discuss it with your band? He goes, don't tell me what my fucking obligations are. Click. Wow. So that show never took place because Kelly Curtis never took it to his band to see if they were interested.
Fiduciary duty, my friend.
Absolutely. Yeah.
But you know what? I'm still more excited about the Rose Festival with Van Halen and Guns N' Roses.
I got to be honest with you, Mitch. That's what I do. I mean, I come up with really, really, really creative ideas because that would have been, and I allude to it in that letter, you have to do, I mean, like Ozzy. Ozzy doesn't do every Ozfest.
Right. You're right.
So Axel would have set up the brand of the Rose Fest by going and doing the first tour, and then that's it. That's it. He does one, and then every Rose Fest after that, he gets the bands together for it, but he doesn't have to do it, and he gets paid.
And that would have, good. That's good branding. And so I'm actually going to finish on this last one because I just thought of it. You were there with the Sanctuary, Rod Smallwood, Merck. There was all kinds of demos being made. You had Brian May come in, Roy Thomas Baker, all kinds of stuff. Yeah. Is there a giant vault of unreleased Guns N' Roses songs?
Not to my knowledge. No, not to my knowledge.
Oh, now you're hurting me. That's disappointing. So
and Mitch,
there's not 100 songs locked away somewhere.
I wish. No. And Mitch, I will tell you, we absolutely thought at Jimmy Iovine's behest. Mm-hmm. I spoke to Bob Ezrin about possibly working on the project, and the timing just didn't work.
I wonder, because Bob is, from all accounts, very dictatorial in the studio. It's his way or the highway, and I just wonder how that would work with Axel. It might make greatness, or it might just be a complete disaster.
Yeah, right. Yeah, wasn't Bob involved in the KNEC thing? KNEC, the launch of KNEC Internet.
That I don't know. I mean, I know Bob more from Kiss, Alice Cooper, Peter Gabriel,
right.
Pink Floyd, The Wall.
Yeah.
And and he's currently working with Alice Cooper on another album. But
very cool.
But it's disappointing to know that there's not 100 or 200 songs sitting there with Buckethead and Brian May and
you know what? And there very well might be. It just again, I have no knowledge of it. I don't. I was gone in 2002. You'd know better than I would when Democracy came out. I just know that I was being called to Jimmy Iovine's office quite often to find out when it was going to be done.
Which was essentially never for the most part. But did they redo Appetite for Destruction? There was talk that band with Buckethead and Bumblefoot and all had recut the entire Appetite for Destruction to use in movies and commercials. And
I had heard that as well. Again, that was kind of post-Doug.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, but I had heard that was something that Axel wanted to do.
So, maybe that's it. Anyway, listen, it's 2 hours. I'm certainly keen for a part 2. I did enough research that
anytime, Mitch. Yeah,
I got a million more questions, but
we barely even covered anything. The one thing that hopefully seems to be a common thread that you get out of this is they were my family, and I love them to death. And if in some point in time I ever had the ability, not even to work with them again, but my dad always says, "What do you care? Why do you care about setting the record straight?" And the reality, I don't really give a shit what the public thinks. I really don't.
Right.
I care what Slash and Duff think and what Axel thinks. I mean, that's it. Bottom line.
Yeah, and I, as a fan, I would like to see them, even if they don't play on stage again, which is what I'd like to see. It would be nice for them to, at least in the media, say nice things about each other, not ban them from each other's shows, not do some of the nonsense we've seen, and just say, hey, you know what? We had a great band. Because, when you talk to Slash in an interview, you're not supposed to ask Guns N' Roses questions. And it's just, it's too bad. It would just be nice.
Too bad.
Yeah, it would be nice to say, tell me about that time and say, that was a great time in my life. And anyway, and same with Axel. Just be able to talk about Slash and not have, getting banned from a venue or. Anyway, it's too bad.
Yeah, right. I agree. And in fact, you know what used to be funny, Mitch? I would get these phone calls from the studio. Axel sitting in his car going, "You wouldn't fucking believe what he's written now. Either locomotive or coma." He's like, "How am I supposed to fucking write lyrics to this?"
Great. Hey, listen, great songs. Anyway, much obliged. 2 hours.
Mitch.
I could certainly go 3 or 4, but
anytime, Mitch.
Absolutely. And I'm going to have this up right away, and people will get to listen to it, and you'll see the internet is going to light up with this one.
Well, yeah. Again, make sure somebody plays it for Slash and Duff, because I love those guys.
Oh, I have a feeling that it'll get played. I'm pretty sure that everybody will be listening. Just hopefully not Michelle and anybody who is big in the business that might cause trouble. But there you go. No, love them all.
Thanks for your time.
Absolutely, and thank you for yours.
Absolutely.
There you have it, folks. My interview with Doug Goldstein of Guns N' Roses and associated with Guns N' Roses as being
the Guns N' Roses family, right?
There you go, the family. Right, because during the interview he mentioned the family a lot. It's a family. It's a family. It's a family. And there will be a part 2 because I think there's another good 2 or 3 hours to go.
Oh my God!
Yeah, I know. It
can't wait.
Never ends. And of course, he mentioned a bunch of the new bands that he's working with. One of them including Mike Orlando, which is kind of cool.
Nice.
Hey, hopefully, maybe we could see them at Heavy Montreal. But folks, not this year. This year we've got Slipknot, Faith No More, Korn, Iggy Pop, No Effects, Within Temptation, and I will keep saying it. Warrant, Dokken, and Lita Ford, Nuclear Assault, and more and more and more. August 7th, 8th, and 9th at Parc Jean Drapeau in beautiful downtown Montreal, Quebec, Canada. Head over to heavymontreal.com for all the information and all the bands. It's a 3-day festival. There's going to be somewhere around 70 or 80 bands in total once everything gets announced.
Including another great 80s era band and 70s even, Pentagram. I don't know if you were
Pentagram.
Very hard rocking, Sabbathy type band. So
Nuclear Assault, of course.
Yes.
Lots. Hey,
Jamie Josta from Hatebreed will be doing a Josta solo gig.
That's right.
Up at Heavy Montreal.
Marky Ramone.
Yes. Yeah. With Andrew WK on vocals, so that should be interesting.
That's right. Listen, there's no reason to not come to Heavy Montreal. You came last year for 1 day out of the 2.
Yeah, I will probably be there all 3 days. At first, this year, I was thinking, I'll go up for 2 days, and now I just don't see how I can't be there for all 3 days. So that's tentatively the plan, but I'll keep you posted.
That's a good plan, and it should be everybody's plan. Listen, there is no festival, there is no Heavy Los Angeles or Heavy Chicago. It's the only game in town, and town being North America. If you love metal, you got to get there. Fly, walk, swim, I don't care. You got to get there.
Absolutely.
But there you go. Did you enjoy that Doug Goldstein being a big Guns N' Roses fan?
Absolutely. I think people are going to just eat that interview up, and like I think you were telling me offline, just dissect it and transcribe it, and there's so much good stuff there. So
well, I know the Guns N' Roses community has a lot of message boards, more active I think than even the Kiss boards. I think this one will get them chat. I mean, listen, my Richard Fortus interview, which had not even the same amount of content as this one, was on the message boards for like a month.
Right.
It got dissected, and that was only a 20-minute interview. This one, I think, with some of the stuff that was said, the Rod Smallwood, the reunion talk. Enjoy, folks. Send me links so I can keep track of all the discussions.
Yeah, I mean, the one GNR forum, mygnrforum.com, which is one of the bigger ones, they claim to get over 1 million hits a month, which is pretty crazy for a message board.
It really is. And it's especially with a band like Guns N' Roses, which really aren't that active. They come out, they do a couple of shows here and there, and then they disappear for another year or two.
Yep.
So there's a lot of going over stuff. But hey, there you go. Another great one. That was episode 100. I'm so glad that I made it to 100. I'm so glad that people have listened. I'm glad to Talking Metal Digital for having given me the platform. And
Absolutely.
I'm certainly looking forward to 200, 300, 400. And of course, my own TV show. No. Why not, right?
Well, it's not that far-fetched, really.
No, and what I would also like to see happen is some of the streaming services, like Spotify, for example, start picking up podcasts. That I think would be very cool. So
yes.
So we'll see. You never know. You never know what's out there in the future, other than a potential Doug Goldstein interview part 2, part 3, part 4. Just as I was hanging up on and saying, I was like, oh, I forgot to ask about Velvet Revolver. Was that a good move? And I just wanted some perspective from a manager, what he thought of all the Guns N' Roses guys getting together and doing this. And I forgot. So there you go. That's the question number 1 for part 2. Mark, always a pleasure. Thank you for helping out.
Mitch. Oh, you bet. Thank you for 100 great episodes.
There you go. Thank you. Night, folks.